Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Breakfast Club with the usual suspects for the moment, and I'm sure we will add more faces as the evening progresses. Greetings, y'all. How goes?
It goes.
Yeah,
It's going.
it's great.
Glad to hear it. Are there any burning issues that you'd like to discuss straight off the bat?
Nah.
Dude, that was my serious face and everything, and it still didn't work. Well, okay, Raven, you've got young kids in the home, right? So you should have qualified, I suppose. Your family should have qualified for the child tax credit. Did you get it already?
Yeah.
It actually happened because, just because they say it's going to happen, I haven't actually spoken to anybody yet who it should have happened to. So you're the first person that I've spoken to. So,
we got it 2 days ago. It's gone.
Yeah. And how much of a difference is that going to make? I mean, in terms of lifestyle.
It's gone. No, it's a good thing. It'll make things a bit easier, So
I think it's like great. When I lived in the UK, they have it called child benefit. And because of my American way of thinking, when I found out, I'm like, hang on a minute, they pay you to have children. And that just seemed like extremely like, whoa, what do you mean they pay you to have kids? And that's obviously not what they're doing. They're paying you so your kids don't starve. That's what they're doing, right? They're not paying you to have those kids in the first place. And I got that after a while, but when I was first over there, the whole concept of it seemed really alien to me. And obviously I raised my kids getting that benefit. You get it till they're 18. And geez, at the time, because especially when my kids were really small, I don't know what I would have done without it. So I think it's about time America caught up to the UK as well as other countries who have benefits like this.
Well, we have other benefits that are similar, but definitely not as expansive as that. I don't know how much money comes in that way, but if you were to run the gamut of all the different social programs we have, it can, really help someone raise a kid. But you have to, in America, establish need.
Right, yeah. And there's a ceiling. I mean, I can't remember if it's 115,000 or 150,000 or something like that for a couple. And then then you don't lose the benefit entirely. I think it just diminishes a little bit.
Are you talking in pounds?
What?
You're speaking in pounds, 115,000 pounds?
No, in dollars.
In dollars?
Yeah, I'm talking about the American one that just happened. I think you can make I think a couple a home can make up to 150 before they start reducing the benefit.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, one thing that I think is brilliant about this benefit is people are going to get used to it awfully quick. It's going to be something that becomes, ordinary and essential. And therefore, it'll be extraordinarily difficult for the Republicans to just yank it away, because a lot of these people getting this benefit, of course, are Republican voters. And I mean, the Republicans have already shown that they're going to try to take credit for stuff they voted against. So don't be surprised when that happens about this stuff. They're going to say, hey, don't forget to, thank me for the stimulus that you didn't, that was what happened before. And obviously they've all voted against it. And that's the same thing they're going to do this time. But I think when it comes to the actual election, I think it'll make a huge difference, because how can the Republicans campaign against it? Not a rhetorical question.
So, sorry, I was setting up my other screen so I could see the people in the chat. But yeah, I don't like things based on politically whether it's advantageous to our party as much as whether it's advantageous to people.
Well, I think that goes without saying, but it happens to be advantageous to our party only because it's being opposed by the other side. If they cared as much about it as American families, they wouldn't have opposed it in the first place.
All right. So the topic du jour in a giant swath of YouTube channels this week would be inflation, right? And if we're going to keep making stimulus packages where we just print money in order to pay for it, then that inflation is actually being seen by those same people that we're giving those funds to. So whether you're on the side of creating the program or not, you're still at best break even. But I think the runaway inflation that a lot of people are afraid of is a very big concern, especially historically. I mean, thankfully we got rid of the fascist Cheeto that we had before we had this runaway inflation scenario, which previously was not very good as far as how well it feeds fascism.
Well, yeah, I think obviously there needs to be some way of what's the word I'm looking for? Regulating inflation. There has to be mechanisms through which we can regulate inflation. In the UK, they do it with interest rates, but I don't know if they do it over here that way.
Well, perhaps that's not been the point the whole time. Perhaps the whole point is that the poor people who try to save lose buying power of their type of currency because they have the paper money that just keeps on getting devalued the more that gets pumped into the system. And the people that have real wealth have things like property. And the ability to buy a home is, farther and farther away from me every year that my wages are stagnant and prices keep going up. So, some wealthy investor or some corporation on government welfare like BlackRock could be buying up all the homes, and then I'll have to be a renter forever. Which is kind of a weird way of enacting slavery, because there's no place to live for free, so you got to pay somebody. You know what?
You're muted.
Yeah, Paul, you need to come correct and unmute.
Sorry about that. I'm just a huge advocate for public housing, but that's a whole different conversation. Which we could have or not, depending on what you feel like. But yeah,
it's worked in some places. I know some people who could speak better to it who aren't on right now, but
sure.
I mean, I suppose the main thing
was down there trying to get my attention. I couldn't see. There's Joe. Okay. How long have you been there, Joe?
Just about a minute.
Oh, okay. I don't feel quite as guilty now. Yeah. Have you been following the conversation?
No, I was running late.
Okay.
What'd I miss?
Michael?
We were all over the place. Wherever you want to begin. Let's get it on. So, Joe, I'm worried about runaway inflation. And although I'm a particularly left-leaning guy, I feel like I'm sounding like one of those Republicans who doesn't want to be called a Republican. He wants to be called a libertarian because he doesn't want to be seen as an asshole, but he's still kind of a Republican.
Well, and that's
those guys.
Well, the funny thing is that the guys who call themselves a libertarian to try and like less of an asshole, I'm like, I'm not convinced that works. Not with me, because I actually, quite frank, I would take a classical Republican, I shouldn't say classical. Just say I'll take an '80s Republican over a current person that calls themselves a libertarian.
Okay.
Because the libertarians are more and more becoming like anarchic, and I think anarchy is bullshit and ridiculous. It doesn't work the way people think it would.
Okay, but you're talking about the 80s Republicans, the same slimy bastards that let Ronald Reagan stay in power even after the Iran-Contra affair.
Well, here's the thing. Yes, those were. Well, I'm not saying I wanted them. I'm saying like, given the choice between the two. So when I'm forced to compare and contrast the two, that doesn't mean I want the other guy. It's just that saying A is better than B does not mean I want A. It means that B is really, really terrible.
I get it. If given the choice between drowning or burning to death, I'll choose drowning. I get it.
Exactly.
And then, of course, the current Republicans are far worse than either of those. So
Yes. Yeah, well, the current Republicans are radicals. They're not conservatives in the slightest, and they are increasingly becoming more and more dangerous because they don't seem to believe at all in the democratic process. They basically feel like they just want power. They don't care how they get it. They don't know. I mean, everybody wants to win, but they're going to lengths that is making certainly everyone on the left and certainly a lot of people in the middle extremely concerned. There was
sorry, Joe. I just want to say, what do you all think about the efforts that's going on with the Texas state, representatives and senators fleeing the state?
Well, it's not the first time it's happened. It's a quorum call, so basically you avoid the quorum. So the thing is, they can't do it forever. So ultimately, it's gonna, they're gonna be able to pass whatever it is, more than likely. But here's the thing: what they're trying to do is they're doing this to try to, raise public awareness and get people to really understand why this has happened. And again, this has happened before, and at least in some of the instances in the past, it actually worked. Where when people actually started paying attention to what the hell was going on, they went, "Oh shit, they're trying to do what?" And then the things had to get rescinded. So I'd say it's probably 50-50 chance that they have of stopping things. But I mean, the thing is that the fight needs to happen because, unfortunately, in the Texas legislature, this is literally the only chance the Democrats have to do anything. And this is one thing I want to, if you indulge me for 2 minutes, one thing that I'm increasingly getting pissed off about people on the left and center who are like getting angry at Biden or Pelosi or Schumer even about, well, they're not doing enough. I'm like, you don't understand the way there's like the Senate rules and House rules, the way these things work. Like, you can pass bills all you want in the House, but if you can't get a vote in the Senate, then it's not going to happen. And right now, because the only way to get a vote in the Senate would be to convince 10 Republicans to allow a vote. That's the thing. Once you actually get the vote, sure, you only need a simple majority. But right now, you need 60 votes in the Senate to move to the floor vote. And that's not going to happen. So other than doing the thing that they're doing the reconciliation bills, that's literally the only other thing the Democrats can do. I mean, they can make the case to the people, they can jump up and down and yell and scream and cry, but at the end of the day, the Republicans don't give a fuck about any of that.
Joe, the outer circle wants to know, what's your idea of a good Republican?
A good Republican? Okay, sure. I see them on a rare occasion, but they do exist. A good Republican actually has fiscally conservative ideals, actual fiscally conservative ideals, not just saying it and being very selective and then pissing away money like water when it's on their priorities. A good Republican, someone who actually believes in small government, as opposed to having the government being intrusive, when it's social issues. What they want to shrink government down to the size that fits in every woman's vagina and inspect her uterus and make sure she's doing the right thing. And that's not what a classical actual conservative used to be for. Barry Goldwater would actually be a good example of a good Republican. He was vilified in his day, but if we could trade the current lot for a bunch of Barry Goldwaters, I'll sleep okay at night. I'm not worried that the country's going to have a coup d'etat by radical right wingers.
Joe, could you name a living Republican that was a good one? Because without saying it, it seems like the only good Republican to you is a dead one. Because you named a dead one. Can you name a live one?
Well, Is it okay if I name somebody who used to be in the Republican Party and isn't anymore?
Go ahead.
Lincoln Chafee. He was a damn good Republican when he was a Republican. He left the Republican Party as they started, because they start really, I mean, they've been on this slide toward radicalism for 40 years, but they really started to amp it up when W was president, and that's when he left the party, because he actually had principles. But that's also the reason why he didn't get anywhere as a Democrat, because he's not a liberal, he's not a Democrat, but he did that because he wanted to take the power away. At the time, Republicans controlled the Senate, and he didn't like where they were headed, so he left the party and went Democrat to swing the balance the other way, to kind of put the brakes on what was going on, because again, he had integrity.
So I heard a different news story that has to do with those Texas Democrats going to D.C. to flee Texas. At the same time, other way around, Joe Manchin goes to Texas and goes on a fundraising trip. That doesn't sound good to me.
No, well, especially considering that the people he met with were Republicans.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good Republican is in the same sort of mold of the people who were in the House and Senate around about 1973, 74, and were willing to hold their own president to account for obvious transgressions of his authority, right? And that did not happen in the 21st century as it should have done. Hell, it should have happened twice, and it didn't happen even once.
You notice that not a one of us owns a Biden hat?
I've never owned anybody's hat. Well, I'm not, people come and go.
Or maybe it's that we don't worship the people that we elect.
Right.
We actually hold them accountable.
I have a
bumper
Dev Shell
stickers?
hat.
How about bumper stickers?
I don't have any of them either.
I have a Bernie bumper sticker that I didn't apply, but it's on my fridge.
Closest ever.
I was this close to making a Trump voodoo doll. All right.
I guess it counts.
I had a Wesley Clark bumper sticker, but I didn't actually put it on my car because I don't believe in putting bumper stickers on my car.
Do you remember when there was like that group of Republicans that were saying Trump's not doing enough? I don't. Like the way that the Democrats are saying that Biden's not doing it. Right. We're actually holding him accountable and taking him to task. Because that's what we do with our elected officials. We're like,
Well, I do see some people on the far right that are complaining that Republicans aren't far right enough. I've seen that.
Yeah. I remember like that. There was one woman that was like that said Trump wasn't, because she was getting hurt by Trump's policies, and said that he wasn't hurting the right people. I'm like, what kind of fucked up mentality you have to have? He's not hurting the right people. Like, we're all citizens. He shouldn't be hurting. I mean, shouldn't be intentionally hurting any of us. No president ever should. Sometimes it's going to happen as a matter of course, but it shouldn't be the goal ever.
Man, just suddenly thinking about just recently, I saw this, and it's kind of off topic. Recently, I saw this speech, this clip from a speech of Trump, where he basically admitted flat out that if news comes out that is against him, he'll say it's fake news. He literally said this in the speech, and if it's positive towards him, he'll say it's the best poll ever. And his fans laughed and clapped for him saying that.
Right.
Can you believe that shit?
Because it shows they don't really care. It's never ever been about policy, and ironically, always been about identity. So they always go off about identity politics. Trump was like the ultimate identity politics vote, where basically, you were anti, Democrat, anti-liberal, anti-progressive, anti-woman, anti-black,
The whole MAGA hat brigade thing to me is as close to a sort of tribal cultish type thing as I've ever witnessed in the United States. certainly politically anyway.
I mean, there was a certain amount of it with Reagan, okay, and still a lot of Republicans, really look up to Reagan, and there was some of that involved there, but it's not nearly on the level. I mean, it was like a tenth of what we're seeing with the Trump people.
Yeah, the irony with Reagan is that if any Democrat tried to do what Reagan did, they would get vilified by Republicans. Reagan had an amnesty for the undocumented immigrants. Imagine if Biden or Obama had tried that. Holy shit!
Right. No, I get really sort of distressed by the lionization of Reagan, and frankly, I get distressed by the lionization of Obama as well. I mean, as we've discussed ad nauseum before, I'm more pro than minus with Obama, but he I don't know. There's so much to complain about that I just get bothered that he's been elevated to this sort of like, this is the best president of our time kind of a thing. I mean, well, yeah, but that's only look at the company, Bush and Trump on either side. You're going to look great compared to those.
Deep Ashtray, thank you very much. The Outer Circle, a soft coup. I mean, if winning an election is considered a soft coup, then yeah.
There's no soft coup. The soft coup is the ongoing attempt by the Republicans to be. Well, I mean, the Republican party is in the middle of purging itself, and there's a right-wing, far-right takeover of the Republican Party happening right out in the open. Everybody can see it.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to hide it, for that matter. You know what I mean? And come 2022, they're going to have, a significant movement, of far right people infiltrating high office.
The as much as he's a shitheel, one thing that I will give to Bill Maher said, like in 2016, that the whole Trump thing was a slow moving coup, and he wasn't wrong.
Right.
And basically now the information that's coming out, like was it General Milley was literally like, Milley basically predicted what was happening on the 6th. He was behind closed doors, but that was a concern of his that, hey, Trump's going to try to actually, and the whole thing on the 6th. I don't care what anybody says. That was the soft coup. They'd be like, okay, because all the information is coming out now. Was obviously Trump was really happy about it, and then as it started to falter, he was like, "Oh shit, this might reflect on me." But if it had succeeded, if they had gotten through and they got hold of Pence, got hold of Pelosi and Schumer and all those, and started killing people or holding them hostage, you would have, I have zero doubt Trump would have been out there egging on the crowd, telling them what to do, and trying to get himself back in office.
So the reality is, though, like the hard right-wingers, right-wing nut jobs had been infiltrating since Obama was elected. I mean, there was the whole Tea Party, they all got rushed into office. And a lot of them are still there. Some have been kind of filtered out, but a lot are still there. And that's when it really started.
Well, the sick part is some of the ones that got filtered out were because they weren't radical enough.
Well, yeah.
What's happening now? That's exactly that's the whole program right now, and, there's literally a loyalty test happening. If this was happening in, Latin America or, someplace in Central Europe, we'd call it fascist. I mean, it's just an open fascist takeover of a major political party. And they are openly, declaratively trying to ensure the probability of minority rule.
Well, in fact, one guy yesterday or the day before actually came out and said, "Oh, well, it's kind of tough for us, but we control the levers of power in the states, so we control the voting, so we'll be okay." So in other words, we can put our thumb on the scale and get the result we want by effectively cheating. And so don't worry about it. We'll win because, we'll cheat.
And they can do this all in front of everyone, and we're all supposed to just be okay with it and be like, "Oh, no, you're just trying to make voting equal." No.
Well, and this is the reason why state elections are way more important than people think, because it's this, it's the state legislatures that do the apportionment. So when now we had our census, and then redistricting is going to be happening, this year, next year, the year after, in various states, and who controls those states is going to determine, where those lines are. And now that SCOTUS said, "Oh, it's perfectly fine to gerrymander as long as it's along political lines," then they're going to be worse than ever.
Well, it's a cliche. I obviously didn't come up with this phrase, but we shouldn't have a situation where the politicians choose their voters. Voters should choose politicians. Districting should be as close to neutral as possible. You know what I mean? I mean, it should just be as grid-like as possible to apportion, the way they've got these things gerrymandered. Sometimes it just goes down like one particular street connecting two completely separate areas of a town, And I mean, or do the voters on that street know that that's their district? You know what I mean? That they're voting for whoever it was, Crenshaw. I think Dan Crenshaw's got a district that's shaped like that. I mean, it's ridiculous what his district looks like.
And also, one of the things about gerrymandering, excuse me, I'm just trying to choke on this Jolly Rancher, is that now some people do the both sides do it thing, which is true to a point. But the difference is, if you look at how the districts are gerrymandered, if you look in, I mentioned this before, in New Jersey here, New Jersey 7, it's a part of Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is predominantly Black and Latino, and Warren County, New Jersey, which is whitey white. And so basically it's done to dilute the Black vote in Elizabeth. So now on the flip side, you have there's one or a pair of districts that the Republicans love to point to about gerrymandering, like, "Oh, look what the Democrats do it too." And when you look at it at its face, it's very odd, because you have the one district that's kind of like an oval, and then the other one kind of wraps around it, so it looks like, hey, a dirty pool. Until you look at it and find that they're both heavily blue districts. They're both Democratic districts. The difference is one district is heavily Latino and the other is heavily Black. But they both historically vote, those two districts vote like 80-90% Democrats. So having them gerrymandered the way they are doesn't affect the overall outcome, except it allows each of those communities to be represented by someone that's more like them. So
I personally think that redistricting should be done by an independent panel of people who literally don't know anything about the demographic makeup of the population they're districting. They just have numbers, where the people live, and you can just district based on sheer numbers. You don't need any other facts other than numbers. And that way they wouldn't be thinking in terms of, this is, mostly Latino area. It's just, this is a number of people. This is another number of people. We're just going to carve them up in as close to regular, shapes as possible. Yeah.
All I need is numbers to show you where the Black people live. The more populous the area, the more Black people are living there across the board. So I could gerrymander without knowing the specific demographics.
I take the point you're making that you don't need to be like up on demography to still be able to make some basic observations like that, because you're not wrong. Population density is correlative to income levels and other such factors. Yeah
I want to address what Marcus said here, that sorry, but that's just wrong. When you have communities that are marginalized, that are facing things that other communities are not facing, it's not the same. So that's just fucking stupid. Okay. I'm sorry, just fucking stupid. The idea that it doesn't matter, it does matter, because there's issues that don't get addressed. If Black people were a minority in every single district that they existed and there was no majority, then there would be no one speaking to our issues at all.
Keep his comment up for a second. I'm looking at it. Is that a QAnon cowboy hat? Is that a giant Q on his hat right there?
Nah.
Okay. Okay, just checking.
Well, we live in a tribal culture, Marcus, so that's also a fucking stupid comment. Sorry, it's true. I mean, the fact of the matter is, again, we have all the statistics to show that there's bias against certain communities. So having those people in those communities have the opportunity to have a representative that has some context to understand those issues is important.
CRB Vegas wants us to talk about the news of the current administration's coordination with censorship of social media. Any thoughts?
Can you repeat that, please?
He wants our thoughts on news about the current administration's coordination with censorship of social media.
I'm generally speaking against censorship, but I don't really know exactly what he's speaking about, so I haven't got an opinion beyond I resist censorship in general.
In practice, there's something that a lot of conservative and right-leaning people have called censorship, where they just, every time they mention COVID-19, a little infographic pops up, like, if you want to know some true details, go here. And so it catches a lot of misinformation that way, where it gets labeled with the real information. But sometimes you just mentioned it, without spreading any misinformation at all, and you still get tagged with that. I'm okay with that. The over tagging of any time you talk about COVID-19 at all. It happens to me on my Facebook post, and I'm okay, because I don't feel like it's there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I'm of the. I have a hard time with censorship in general, and issues of free speech are pretty close to my heart. But the issues, the cultural manipulation that goes on from within and without on social media platforms needs to be addressed in some manner. And I don't have a better idea. I don't really know, how you square the circle of giving people the opportunity to post freely, but at the same time you can't have the same kind of FCC regulation on the internet that you had on radio and television, for example. They cannot possibly police the internet in the same way. It's too vast,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Well, here's the funny thing about it is, the right wing wants to get rid of Rule 230, but actually Rule 230 would actually increase censorship by the social media companies, not decrease it, because basically that now they'd be legally liable for what everybody posts. Which means if you think that they're draconian now, watch the fuck out, because I know if I had a company and I was going to be held responsible for the bullshit that Curtis says, I would block that motherfucker so fast his head would spin.
I mean, 230 Section 230 needs. I mean, it could be significantly modified, but if they try to get rid of it, that's crazy.
Well, the thing is, again, that's not the part that it causes the thing that they're upset about. That's what gets me, though. It's totally from a different part that's the issue. But the whole thing is that, again, this is I always find ironic, because the right wing is all about the free market, the free market, the free market. Let the free market do what it wants to do, and no regulation. And then when the free market did something they didn't like and that hurt them, then all of a sudden they didn't like the free market so much.
Yeah, and then when you try to tell them, well, you're wanting to regulate these companies. No, we're not. We're just saying, no, you're wanting to regulate them. If you're trying to tell them that they can't moderate their own platform, then you're regulating them. You're telling them what to do.
Right. Which would also be, to my way of looking, would also be a violation of the First Amendment.
Any social media company that got too far in bed with the government wouldn't last, because people would just flee it and go to a freer, more open place to express yourself. Facebook is not too big to die. Nor
Let me sell my stocks first.
I do think it's unfortunate that the government is getting involved in the censorship on a platform such as Facebook. I don't think our government should be involved in that at all. But there have been a number of reports showing that they are our government is telling Facebook what to censor.
Now, what I had seen wasn't not exactly that. It was, but it was still something to be concerned about. But it wasn't as open. It wasn't as direct as that.
Google has for decades now posted the takedown requests for website listings that each government has put out there, and they've been telling Google just with the listings even to bury people from being able to be found. And that's been going on for a very long time. Countries saying you need to take this off the internet because of national security. They give a list of how many requests each country makes each year, and it's been going up every year.
Now, in the case, if you're trying to find the source of people talking about our government doing this, it's Jen Psaki. I don't know if is that the way to pronounce her name? Is it Psaki? She basically makes the statement. So if you look up her name and censorship in Facebook, I'm sure you'll find the video pretty easily.
So I found what you were talking about. So what they're talking about is they're talking about flagging content on Facebook that is false, in particular related to the vaccine and the virus.
Yes, but it's the fact that the government is spending any effort at all flagging content is what people are seeming to have a problem with, and it is somewhat a concern that the government is getting involved in. I mean, that is an effort to censor. I mean, it's censoring things that probably should be censored, but still they're getting involved in it. So
I think one of the reasons why they do get involved the most is because there actually is a coordinated disinformation program from other countries where they start social media profiles and then hide behind that freedom of speech that we cherish so much. They use our strengths against us in order to promote the disinformation. Thus, Trump's presidency was born.
Right.
So, all right, outer circle. Why do we have tech company censorship? Because they own the platforms. So if I own a station or if I own a platform of some sort, I get to control the content on that platform. Unless you want to nationalize those platforms, which would actually be socialism, not all the other bullshit that the right wing keeps calling socialism.
Another thing is these platforms they're going to lose users one way or the other. And they have a choice in which users they're going to lose. If they don't censor the people who are making people feel bad for simply being the demographic that they are, like people saying negative things about gay people saying that women should take a traditional gender role or something like that, right? And now I just completely lost where I was going because I
losing users, controlling how they lose users.
You're going to lose users either way, you said.
Okay. So they're either going to lose if they do censorship, they won't lose the marginalized groups. Okay, but if they don't do censorship, then they lose those marginalized groups. If they do the censorship, they'll lose the users that are saying negative things
marginalizing.
Yeah. So they have a choice in which users they want to lose.
But I mean, in the way that you laid that out, that's not really censorship what they're doing. They would be enforcing their terms of service.
Yes, but it's still an issue of they have a choice in which users they want to lose.
But I give you another.
But that's like a little bit different than like censorship. I mean, it's
right.
Go ahead.
Plus, to give a good example of something that's different and a little more obvious. Okay, so every time there's a commercial with a mixed race couple or a gay couple or an LGBT, any LGBTs or trans person, and they're rare, but you're starting to see trans people in commercials. So whenever that happens, there is a segment of the population that loses their fucking cookies, and they yell and scream and they boycott and all this kind of stuff. Now, they used to have more power way back in the day, so you would very much not see, like, if you remember back in the early 2000s, there was a TV show that was like basically showing a Muslim American family being just normal people, and there was actually anger over that because they were depicting Muslims in a way where they weren't terrorists, which is like, really? But see, now what's happening is when people are going back to because, hey, there's a mixed race couple or a gay couple or whatever, the companies are doubling down and going, because the money, it's not that those companies are so progressive or whatever, but they realize that the money is to be with the marginalized groups, that there's more money in being on the side of people of other races and different religions and so forth than there is to the old guard, if you will.
There's more money in pretending not to take sides and allowing these flames to be fanned. That's where the money's at. They're pretending they're not taking sides, but by pretending you're not taking sides, you're actually taking the sides of the liar. If you don't take the side of the truth, you're taking the side of the lies.
It actually kind of depends. Like, okay, this past year, this past Pride Month, actually, to be more specific, there was a lot of talk about rainbow capitalism and about how there was this massive backlash this year against corporations that back, at least publicly, outwardly, back LGBT causes. And it was like seen as a really bad thing. And I get what people are saying, but at the same time, I remember a time before there was corporate buy-in. And I remember when we started corporate like floats in the parade and all that stuff, and we saw that it made a difference in society overall, that support actually lifted the community. Those corporations didn't give a shit about gay rights. They didn't care about the LGBT community, but they did recognize that there was an untapped financial market, and they could make a ton of money by pissing off the right, by backing these people with expendable income. So they made a ton of money. But the side effect of that was that the LGBT people, well, mostly LGB, became a lot more acceptable mainstream. Mainstream America bought in because Oreos bought in.
Right, and the thing is that it does make a difference, Paul, because here's the thing. Again, if you look back, 20, 30 years ago, and you talk about representation, there was a backlash because the black community got tired of every TV show. It's either the angry black woman or the prostitute or the pimp or the drug dealer, and we basically said no, we're done. And you can't have. So they didn't want 13% of the population to just stop consuming their products. At the end of the day, like Raven said, the people who got pissed off when there were starting to be better representation, eventually most of them got over it. It's the same thing now. And the funny thing is, like I saw an ad about 2-3 years ago, and it was two women. Now they weren't obviously lesbian, like they weren't holding hands, they weren't kissing. They were just two women, and they were traveling together. It was Amtrak, I think it was, and there were, this group of right wingers that were going ballistic again about so-called, shoving it down our throats. And basically Amtrak's like, yeah, no, we're going to do more of that because you know what? Some of our riders are gay. And actually these women could have been sisters actually, but you made the assumption because of your biases. Well, we don't care about you and your biases. Fuck you and your biases. We're going to double down. And that's a good thing. I think that moves us in the right direction because I'm sick and tired of being told that any time someone who isn't white male Christian does it's shown in doing anything positive, that's a shoving something down their throats. We exist. We're fucking here. All of us are here.
Joe, every time I have a lunch break, there's only certain places I can go if it's like an hour lunch break. One of the places I cannot go because I would not have enough time to eat my food after I got through the line is Chick-fil-A. That place is backed up, around the block. Why is it that Chick-fil-A is making so much money? Is it because the people who are racist are all flocking to that one place where they know that they're welcome there?
I have to answer this honestly. I've been to Chick-fil-A before. I won't go there anymore, but I've went there before, and they actually have a superior product. It's not like something that you could get at a normal fast food place. It's more like something you get at a restaurant. It's really good quality, and I really believe that's why that's happening.
Certainly not everybody at Chick-fil-A. Not everybody's, transphobic, homophobic, whatever. Although I got to question this idea. I've had people tell me this for years that their product is so good. I stopped eating their food long before I was aware of their politics because it's crap. It's garbage. Once I got to eat better food, I stopped eating there because it's just dreck. But, and actually what happened is when the kerfuffle a few years ago happened, when people started boycotting, I waited until everything died down. And then I went back and I did buy because I wanted to see, I wanted to try to be unbiased as possible and say, hey, I used to like this ages ago and I stopped liking their food. And now that no one's paying attention to me, I'll try it. I was not impressed. And the one here on nearby here is packed all the time. And I think their food's crap.
But you've seen them packed all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, people are fucking idiots. What do you want? I have massive contempt. But people don't know food.
Well, I mean, have you tried their spicy, or did you just do their regular?
I tried their regular, but basically the only thing that they ever had that I liked was years. We're talking 2 decades ago, maybe longer. They had this chicken pocket that was actually this processed chicken board thing that was breaded and fried, and it was delicious. And they stopped carrying it, and then I didn't like anything else on their menu, and I stopped going.
Pickle juice.
What?
That's the secret to their chicken.
It is a secret. It was also the secret to mine. I mean, I had people that would come to my deli to buy the chicken salad. People would rave it. They still rave about it. I've been closed for years, and I still get people asking about the recipe and everything else and what was the secret. Pickle juice.
Yeah.
Marinate the chicken in pickle juice.
Yeah.
That's the secret. That's what chicken. That's what I did. That's the secret.
I'd like to highlight Curious's stupid comment.
Go ahead.
So here's the thing. Boycotting a restaurant is not censorship. That's the other side of that coin. And the right wingers boycott shit all the time. Remember all the right wingers burning their Nikes and stuff like that? So if we don't want to go, yeah. So no one's censoring Chick-fil-A. They can give money to whatever anti-LGBTQ thing they want. I don't have to give them my money.
Yeah. There's no Chick-fil-A's over in the UK, so I never ate anything over there, and I certainly won't bother to go in one over here. I don't see the reason to start something I never did. I don't care if it's great. I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. Actually, right wingers keep trying to start their own platform and they fail. So maybe that tells you something. Again, they're not getting censored. They can make whatever platform they want. Trump made something a couple months ago, and it was an abject failure, and so they quietly shut it down because it was embarrassing how few people went. So again, that's the free market. People, you want something, make it, and I don't care. I'm not going to stop somebody from making a right-wing platform. In fact, I'd be happy if all the right-wingers had their own platform and would go there and leave the rest of us to fuck.
They had Parler, and they got it shut down. Because it was due to the insurrection, it should have been shut down for that reason. That you can't allow, open sedition to proliferate.
Well, I mean that kind of stuff still proliferates on BitChute and Gab and Parler still, and it's all over the alternative web. It's all over it. That same kind of mindset's all over it. The worst part of MAGA is all over it. The Q mindset is all over it. You wouldn't believe how here is the negative side to having these people removed from platforms such as YouTube, because once they're on their own platforms, they get no pushback. They get no pushback, and they get worse and worse and worse. And I'm watching them get worse and worse, and it's scary.
Wow.
So I think Paul hit the nail on the head there. You can't allow open sedition on these platforms. And what gets simplified as censorship on social media by Jen Psaki, really they're going after open sedition, right? They're going after the people who think that they're going to install Trump as Secretary of State so that they can ostensibly assassinate the president and vice president and skip them in the line of succession.
Right.
Well, they're also going after, though, anti-vax people too. So
I don't even know what to say about that. I just know the whole the organization that's going on the internet. I mean, I want to believe that the powers that be have got the fucking eyes on this shit and are putting names to faces, and and I don't like to even say that out loud, because once upon a time I would have been horrified at the government monitoring what you're doing on the internet. But at the moment, considering that we witnessed an insurrection, and I don't pay anywhere near as much attention to it as the right-wing circles as maybe Michael or Kazum might do, for example, and I knew it was coming on the 6th. If I knew, I have to believe that the people in power knew. You know what I mean? So, and I've been saying ever since the 6th that these people aren't done. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And whether this idea of having Trump reinstated is obviously fantastical, because that's an open coup. There's nothing in the Constitution that says a president can be reinstated under any circumstances. So,
I'm concerned about what these crazy people are going to do on August 13th. It's a significant date. It's something that a lot of things are pointing to. Even the Mike Lindell, Mr. My Pillow, was saying he's trying to say that Trump's going to be reinstated on the 13th. But even if he's not, which he obviously isn't, but these people may react in a very extreme way. There may be some sort of violent demonstration. We don't know, but it's a date we should be paying attention to.
Right. I'll have to look more into that.
I mean, that's the thing. This whole thing of the right tries to paint the left as, oh, we're so terrible and oh, censorship. Like I don't see anybody showing any evidence that the left is or was planning any violent overthrow of the fucking government. So basically the left says, hey, stop calling me names. The other one's like, give me the political outcome I want, or I'm going to shoot people. This false equivalent bullshit, that's what fucking pisses me off. And no one here's doing that.
They're going to try to point to the violence that has happened over the past year, over the police stuff. They'll say it's Antifa violence. They'll say it's BLM violence, and they'll say, look at all this stuff that's happened over this past year. What's that? And we know it's different. We know it's different. But I'm saying that's their mindset.
But then the response is just in context. It's irrelevant.
I mean, that's part of the problem. Cause I don't think even them being on places where there's pushback makes a difference either, because I don't see, basically when you confront them with facts or any alternate view, they either dismiss you or just say nasty things to you, which is, I think, is kind of hilarious, because they're always saying that we can't handle people with other views, and they can't handle people with other views. The thing about social media that gets me is that, like, for a long time, people are saying that, social media has created these bubbles. That's not true. Those bubbles existed. The problem that we experience with social media is that it causes all those bubbles to intersect, and that's where we get friction. If you think about anyone who you've had, a friend of yours you had political dispute with over the last 5-10 years, that probably never happened because it used to be you didn't talk about politics, you didn't talk about religion, you didn't talk about a couple other things, and so people kind of, we had our little pockets. Like I know a lot of people who play the strategy games I do are right wing. We never used to talk about politics, so we didn't have conflict over it. But then once we started, then it got heated because we're every time you go on your feed and this person's ridiculous thing, ideas are scrolling past you on your feed, and you go, oh, the fuck that guy,
Well, I mean, what you say is true, but there is also the element of people's bubbles becoming much more pronounced because of social media. The bubbles have become much more extreme. People who may not have went extreme because they see all these other people saying similar things, and you get locked into that more. So, I mean, I think both things are true.
I've certainly seen that happen over the years with you, Kazum. And depending on where you're focusing your attention on at the time, you've gone this way and then you jog back that way a bit, and you've done that. And it really does come down to sort of what you're consuming and, who you're giving credence to,
That's true. It's interesting, though, how I just keep looking back and I cringe so much at how much I was fucking acting like I was doing the Dave Rubin waltz for the longest fucking time, man. And I let people on the right and people to the right of me anyway, whatever. I let them convince me that if I didn't basically do the Dave Rubin waltz, that I'm an unreasonable person, and it just
that needs to be a video title.
Dave Rubin waltz. Well, yeah, it's militarian. It's this appeal to false middle. Like we have to look at every single opinion and consider them all equal, and then to be reasonable, we have to kind of assume that every single opinion has something of value to add to the conversation, and that's just not fucking true. There are some opinions that are just completely worthless, depending. And the thing is, can change. Like, okay, most none of us are medical people. So our opinion on medicine is only valid to the point that we point to medical experts. Well, Mike, Mike, you're kind of a medical person, but everyone except Mike. But I mean, you're not. Well, you're psychology though. You're not like you're not like an MD or something like that. So, but the thing is, people like to think, well, this expert says this, but hey, Joe down the road on his YouTube channel said this stupid full bullshit. So I have to pretend that these things are equal, and I have to give them equal weight, and that's just bullshit.
I think under the same atmosphere, that's why we have flat earthers, is because we allow them the same equality in some instances where we should not. And a lot of the things that we're trying to flatly dismiss, just like we would flat earthers, they're thriving in the spaces that we create because they hide behind our own value of free speech.
I want to address what Deep Ashray said. Everyone hates a moderate. I know that's the kind of like the in thing to do. But I don't hate moderates. The problem is what people confuse, as I said in the past, middletarians with moderates. The political middle is not the equidistant between whatever the Republicans are saying, whatever the Democrats are saying. That's not the middle. That's not the so. But the political middle might be somewhere. But then, so if one group is just say middle left and the other one is way far out on the right. The middle is not at the center. The middle is still far to the right. And so a moderates are someone who's, they have some, liberal values and some conservative values and in, roughly equal measure. Not somebody. And the thing is, like I said, the people that are Republicans today with the R in the name, they're not conservatives. They're radicals. So trying to appeal to be between, typical, we'll just say a typical run of the mill liberal and them is not going to get you to the center. That's not moderation.
I see the outer circle just throwing it out there that I heard the Clintons knew Epstein. So there's pictures of Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein together, definitely. Just like there's pictures of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of Trump's family and the Epsteins and Ghislaine Maxwell. But the one that disturbs me the most is not political. It's Bill Gates knew Jeffrey Epstein and lied about him. And the more that I learned about his connection to Jeffrey Epstein and how many times he flew with him, I'm like, ooh, man, is there a reason why Melinda decided to divorce him?
I was just going to say that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you know, certainly Bill Clinton knew him. I mean, that's the whole question is like, so it's the whole guilt by association. Like, well, I don't care if he knew him, but did he know him? That's the question. So was he getting hooked up with, you know, underage, women? Well, if that's the case, then you know what? Flush Bill Clinton if he did that. See, that's the difference. On the left, most of us, at least, if we discovered that Bill Clinton was fucking 16-year-olds, would say fuck that motherfucker and get him out of here. Whereas Trump could fuck a 16-year-old on TV, and his MAGA hats would be waving their fucking MAGA hats.
Yeah, as long as he said some blunt thing to somehow rationalize what he did, right?
Right. Or is nothing else. Hey, see the way I fucked that 16-year-old? Yay, he's virile.
It just is what it is. That if you're going to seek public office, you just need to, you know, quit having affairs and quit fucking underage girls. You know, that's it. There are operatives out there that are trying to collect, blackmail material on people.
They shouldn't be doing that anyway.
Yeah. If you're going to be a public servant, you need to be beyond blackmail.
That's my problem.
I like the way that whenever you're spoken about in print, that they always associate you with your lack of belief in a deity, as if it is very, very important that everybody know this at every moment that you're ever mentioned.
And I mean, every time they do mention it, I respond where I actually, you know, confirm it and back it up. I mean, you know, they're using it as a weapon, and I'm just like, that's right.
You that reminds me of Raven in Clear and Present Danger, when there's it's the beginning of the movie, some rich guy who was apparently connected to the cartels, but you know was unknown, but he was somebody well connected in Washington, and so the media is going to use that against, you know, the president in the movie, and so some of the aides are telling him how he should try to minimize it, pretend it didn't happen, and Harrison Ford's character is like, don't. The horse is already out of the barn. You know, you got to disarm it. He's to say, no, we weren't friends. We were lifelong friends. And that diffuses it, because basically you're saying, I'm not running away from this. This is nothing shameful, nothing to hide, because I didn't do anything wrong.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. So when they come and they start talking about, you know, my non-belief, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not hiding from this. I'm not running from this. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you're a Christian, but, you know, hey, the way you're governing is anything that's nowhere near what your faith would call for. You know, right. Where's your compassion for the poor? Where's that? You know. So I mean, yeah, I love that kind of stuff. That, you know, you want to have a conversation about faith? I'm ready. Let's have it.
Joe, I know right now there's somebody listening to us who's driving across country, and I'm just trying to say something that'll make him like spit out his coffee into his windshield. And I just want to say that the reason why Republicans are voting Republican at this point is just like lifelong fandom of the sports team. There is no real reason for them to do it except for fan loyalty. They're fanboys. Also, Good and Plenty are way better than Jolly Ranchers.
Yeah. Hey, have at it. I don't like them, but good and fruity. I'll take, but.
I just want to back up what Michael just said there, because I mean, in the last election, they like literally officially had no platform other than support for Trump. That's not a platform. That's not policies of any kind whatsoever. And the fact that they still want to like seize power with no actual goal for what to do in government other than to make it hard for people that they don't like. I mean, that seems to be like an open agenda.
Well, it was all pwn the libs. Everything's to pwn the libs. I even saw an article recently saying that they're not going to take the vaccine because it pisses off the libs. Like, they literally said that as it's. I wish I had the title of the actual article.
The thing about
this
that
whole
really
thing
makes
is all
me
about owning the libs.
The thing that makes me laugh about that is they don't seem to realize how far into their heads this shit has got. You know what I mean? They're allowing their thinking to be driven by something that's not real. You know what I mean? I mean, your blood's as red as mine, right? You know, we both sleep under the same stars. We depend on the same resources. You know, end of the day, we got much more that we need to do to live in society together. You know, I mean, we can disagree about stuff, but at the end of the day, we there's so much more we have to agree about. It's not a matter even of choice. We have to, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's kind of gets me about it too. Like, basically, it's like we're seeing a new spike now. Like, Florida apparently has like 20% of all new cases because of the Delta variant, and there's these people out there that are like, yeah, it's one thing. It was sad that there are people that were driven to paranoia to the point where they didn't believe the science and bad, you know. But when people are like literally like gleefully like, aha, I'm not going to take the protection because haha, that'll make other people upset. I'm like, well, if that person goes, I can't really have any compassion for that, you know, because it's like, you know, or somehow that not doing it is a matter of toughness. And I'm like, it's almost like people who tell you that they're cool. Like, if you have to tell me you're cool, you're fucking not cool.
Bro, I'm not getting the vaccine, bro, because I'm an alpha.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So basically, they're lining up to not do something that is good for them to show how tough they are. And like, if you're that worried about other people perceiving you as tough, you're not fucking tough. Like, I'm tired of the people who seem to need like a handgun or an AR-15 to go to Safeway telling me that they're the tough people. You know, I had a guy a few months ago. He's like, because I was saying something negative about guns. He's like, well, how do you defend yourself? I'm like, from what? From fucking what? The only thing I'd have to worry about is another asshole with a gun.
It depends on where you live, and it depends on. There's a bunch of things it depends on.
Right,
Depends
but like,
on.
most of the people saying this live in the hinterlands where there's like, you know, very little crime, and so it's like, well, what the fuck are you afraid of?
When it comes to the people not taking the vaccine, though, you just would not believe how many people actually think the vaccine is some sort of plan to depopulate the planet. They actually think that the vaccine is going to kill you. You just wouldn't believe it. It's huge. It's just this. It's enormous. Even and they'll claim they'll every side effect and every negative thing that's happened to someone, they'll say, see, this is what they're planning. This is what you wouldn't believe it, man. You wouldn't believe it.
But those people come out every there's any kind of like major health crisis anywhere in the world, or when there's a high casualty event, those people come out.
It could be a natural occurrence, like an earthquake or tornado event, or a fucking tsunami, and they say it was the HARP thing in Alaska.
Right.
You know?
These are the Illuminati people. You know, and the whole depopulation thing, it's all part of the Illuminati. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, there's a lot.
This is worse.
I don't know. Every time I see or hear them, I just kind of shrug.
This is picking up a lot more traction than those things. I will make the prediction right now that the next virus that comes out will be another lab-borne virus and it will be an attack that the Republican Party is going to facilitate on America, because every other country is smart enough to fucking wear masks and get the fucking vaccine, but we're going to lose half our fucking country thanks to the Republicans helping them out by being resistant to that vaccine as well.
I think there's a slight issue, and I hate to be that guy, but there's a slight issue in the way it's being reported. At least I was watching MSNBC since I came back from the UK, and I noticed they're talking about the number of positive cases every day, and going up and whatever. And let's just pick a number. Say it's 25,000 cases a day. Well, that doesn't tell me anything I need to know. What I need to know is that 25,000 out of a million tests, or is it 25,000 out of 100,000 tests? Because that's two very different 25,000s. You know what I mean? One really matters, and the other one is, hey, we're getting somewhere with this shit, But just telling me 25, that's the wrong statistic. And when I see wrong statistics being reported, I'm automatically like, why are they doing that?
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed which statistic I was typing this.
Oh, well, basically they're talking about, the number of positive tests per day, like in absentia of what percentage of the tests are positive. What percentage of the tests are positive? That's a statistic I can work with. That's a statistic that matters. That's a statistic that tells me whether we're getting better or getting worse. How many positive tests there are a day? It depends on, like I say, if you do 1 million tests and 25,000 are positive, that's only 2.5%. I think we're getting somewhere. If you do 100,000 tests and 25,000 are positive, that's 1 in 4. That's an outbreak. That we need to put masks back on and go back home. If that's the level.
I would argue both numbers are important for different reasons. Because look, if we all of a sudden just had 300,000 new cases in a week, it doesn't matter what percentage of the total. That's a lot of fucking people. The absolute net values do matter when they start getting big. But those two pieces of information tell us two different things.
I just want to bring up a comment from Vegas real quick. Here we go. Someone taking the vaccine to bait the left into doing something draconian. I don't think that's necessarily true, but, I wouldn't also put it beyond the realms of believability as a plausible possibility. But, I don't like to think in terms of the wider plan of things. I think a lot of this shit's made up as it goes along, unfortunately. I think we could have had a better plan in the beginning and we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now.
Well, I get what Vegas is saying, though, because thankfully, currently it's a small percentage, but there's a percentage of people on the right who basically want the Democrats, want the liberals, the left to do something egregious to justify an actual civil war, that they actually have a justification to go out there and start shooting motherfuckers and taking shit over. So they actually kind of want it. The irony is, if we do have Delta really starts to take hold and really starts sweeping through the population, because apparently as virulent as the alpha and beta versions were, Delta is like I was reading some 5 to 10 times more virulent. If that's the case, it could really start killing off a lot of people, and it's going to be them. It's not going to be us, because we're our side's way more vaccinated than they are.
Yeah. I did the math, and we're losing 100 people a day right now. If that remained constant, which I don't believe it will, I believe it will spike again in the winter. But if it remained constant, there'll be, over 100,000 more people dead by the next election.
And way more on their side than ours.
Than us. Way more than them and us.
And I'll tell you, I'm reaching to the point where I'm almost like, good, fuck it. You know what?
No, man, that's exactly what the fucking Republicans were doing at the beginning of all this shit, Joe. They were saying, hey, it's mostly in the Democratic area, so we're not going to worry about it. We're going to let it burn. That's, so I respectfully go, no, brother, no. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but see, it's the thing, though. There's a difference, is that they the Democrats wanted people to be protected, and Republicans were saying, well, we don't give a fuck about Democrats. These are Republicans that don't want to be protected. So it's not like us taking something away. They're taking away from themselves. That's a totally different totally different context. So if someone's going to sit there and say, I'm not going to wear the bulletproof vest before the bullet gets fired at me, and they're bragging about it. Fine, bye. Bye.
It actually speaks credence to what Vegas is saying, that they would be baiting us into doing something draconian. On the left, we might actually consider draconian measures to save people's lives, even those who disagree with us. On the right, they're like, no, fucking let them die.
But that's the whole thing. I don't want to do anything. If someone is that at this point, there's so much evidence that one, the vaccine works, and two, the wherever the source of the virus originally, that it really is a killer. If someone really wants to like just be that bullheaded.
Well, I'm experiencing a new phenomenon that I thought I'd mention since we're on the vaccines and all this topic. Since I came back from the UK, they lifted the mask mandate here. And so most places, like businesses I see, might have a sign on. If they have a sign at all, it will say, if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask, but we hope you will choose to wear a mask if you're not vaccinated, or something along those lines, words to that effect. And I'm fully vaccinated, and so is my gal, but we wear a mask anyway because, I just don't think we're done. And it's that simple. But what I'm experiencing is new is even here in Boulder, which is fairly liberal, I'm feeling like I really stand out because most people aren't wearing masks anymore by far.
Well, when I went to Amarillo a few weeks ago, nobody in Texas, almost nobody in Texas was wearing masks other than servers. And even places where the sign said you had to wear a mask, people were just ignoring it. That's
how it was in St. Louis. I mean, like you say, except for people serving at counters or restaurants, everyone else had no mask.
Now, New Jersey wasn't like that when I left, but now it seems that the mandate's gone, and most places are letting people in without masks. Now, thankfully, here in New Jersey, we're one of the higher vaccination rates in the country. So it's probably we actually had no COVID deaths 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I was surprised. We had a whole week with no COVID deaths and only like 145 new cases. So okay, so then that says, well, all right, maybe we're relatively safe. But in Texas, that's not the case, and then people are still going to keep doing it.
Well, if the COVID death rate stabilized at or around 100 a day, that's roughly approximately what the flu death rate was per year, about 36,000 a year. And that's something that I think doesn't require the draconian measures that we've been talking about. You know what I mean? Like, so I think we have to be careful how we move forward, because I do worry about overly restrictive policies, which, although well-intended and probably even meant as temporary, never seem to go away. Like those back scanners in the airports, for example, is a good example of what I'm talking about. They're never going away.
The thing about it, though, is like you think about, I mean, certainly restrictions that were keeping people from going to work probably needed to go at this point, but people should still generally wear masks. People should still get vaccinated.
People should definitely get vaccinated, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's such a no-brainer. It's really frustrating seeing the whole culture war being entwined with this issue. I have plenty of people I care about in the UK. Almost none of them are getting vaccinated, and it's really depressing. But my whole attitude is they're all intelligent adults who are making decisions based on the information available to them. And it's not like they're doing these things without thinking about it, or because they're believing what some stupid politician said on Fox News or whatever. They're thinking it over. Most of them are all about this, the whole, it's too soon, blah, blah, blah. I want to wait and see. Or straight up, my kids are like straight up like, no way, man, I don't trust that shit. You know what I mean? And that's it. So
I don't really understand the too soon people. We've been taking the vaccine for like 5 months, 6 months now. Millions, I think probably 1 billion people have gotten vaccinated so far. And the number of negative results are extremely low. And so it's like, well, that's the thing. The chances of you getting COVID and having a negative outcome is way higher than the chances of you getting a negative outcome from the vaccine. And most people who would have a bad negative outcome from the vaccine, they already know what those risk factors are. So yeah, those people probably shouldn't because they have those risk factors. But it's just beyond ridiculous. Because it's fake skepticism. It's not skepticism, it's cynicism.
I know my guilty pleasures are different from the vices you guys have, but I watch every season of Law and Order religiously. And a new spinoff came out, Law and Order Organized Crime. And in it, this first season that they had a plot to steal COVID-19 vaccines and sell them on the black market. And for a short window of time, that was like a believable scenario as far as what could actually happen. But now you can't give that shit away. And it makes the whole like season kind of, it doesn't land well now, because it was only like a month or two that you actually could have a heist that where the vaccines would be worth millions.
About 2 to 3 months, but still, you're right. And I did see. I haven't seen the whole season yet, but I did see that episode. And that's the thing. Though, when the episode first aired, that was very much a real possibility.
Yeah, but now future generations looking back are going to be like, those things are free at Walmart,
Yeah.
Well, there's still things we don't know. The whole idea about whether or not we're going to need boosters after 6 months after our second shot or whatever is still sort of up in the air. I'm sure the trials for that have been in progress for some time now, etc. I don't personally. I'm worried about it's not the vaccine hesitancy when people I'm worried about. It's the vaccine refusers that I worry about. Because they're trying to grow, they're actively trying to grow their numbers.
Yeah. It's not the fact that someone is anti-vax themselves. It's the fact that they're trying to spread that madness everywhere.
Right.
I think that's the real virus.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, touche. Hey, let's change the subject, man. We talk about COVID a lot. Something lighthearted. Kazoom, go.
Well, I don't have anything lighthearted. I don't have anything like
do
that.
Something heavy then. Something that'll take over the whole.
Okay. How about the Gay Men's Chorus San Francisco, the song that they put out recently that's really has a lot of people pissed off. That's "We'll convert your children, and we're coming for your children. We'll make them tolerant and fair." Now, the whole thing is supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, but that's perception means everything. Like, perception is why Hillary lost, for instance, right? So the way they put out this message, the left, I'm sorry, we've discussed this before. The left is terrible at messaging. They're terrible at optics. They're just awful about it. And on this, they thought it would be something kind of cute and funny, but it's being used as proof that the LGBT community wants to spread an ideology, and
well, they do.
The
ideology that LGBTQ people are normal or everyday people like everybody else.
I agree. But the way they put out this message, it's going to be used against the LGBT community for years to come. Probably for at least 5 years, they're going to use it against the LGBT. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out.
I haven't seen it yet. I saw an excerpt of it, I think, on Colbert, though. But to me, I respectfully disagree. I think hell, I'm preaching to the choir anyway here, but y'all exist, right? And people just have to get used to that shit. And it's okay to have a sense of humor about it. It's okay. People need to climb down, man. They need to climb off the fucking high horses and realize that we can all take the piss out of each other without hatred. You know what I mean? It's not about hatred.
I agree, but these people are basically the people that are against this are the ones who want to continue to be able to teach their children their religious values, and they feel
Okay,
they
but
feel this as a threat. And you know what? They're trying to legitimize hatred and that sort of thing.
They're
right?
going to do that. They're going to do that whether or not that song ever existed.
But there are people who were on the fence that are no longer on the fence. They're on the
I don't
anti
believe
side
that.
now.
No, I don't believe that at all.
Even if that's true, they were going to tip that way anyway on some other impetus, whether it was this song or something else. My whole thing is, and maybe I'm wrong, but my thing is, by conceding you're basically conceding that their argument is valid. If you say, "Oh, we're gonna not do this," because it's offensive. No, their fucking bigotry is offensive, brother. That's what's
but in order to reach the people we need to reach, we do need to walk on eggshells. That's just the fact. That's just how it goes. In order to get them to understand the message, we have to walk on eggshells. If we don't, and we do the opposite, we risk we risk completely alienating them.
They're already alienated, and they're trying to.
Okay. So let me tell you a story. This is something that just happened today, actually. So for the last summer and so far, pretty much all summer this summer or since spring, I try every day. I try to go for a walk. It's about 2 to 3 miles that I walk almost every single day. For Father's Day, my daughter got me a tank top that has the trans flag on it, and it says "I am." It's a unisex tank top. It's a men's tank top. So the sleeve holes are kind of big, right? No big deal. I'm only going for a walk around the block, right? I wore it. I stopped by a friend today who's having a garage sale. So I stopped by and she said, "Oh, message from the neighborhood. It's fine and all if you want to have boobs, but don't wear that tank top because they can see side boob." And my first reaction was, well, fuck them. And then I went home and I'm thinking about it and I'm just like, wait a minute. Cis women wear things all of the time that show side boob, under boob, top boob. They'll walk around and they'll go to a deli, right? To a store, to a convenience store, wearing a bikini and a bikini top. Nobody says shit. I have a little bit of side boob. The issue wasn't the side boob. The issue was I'm trans. That's the issue. So now I should have to walk on eggshells, right? And change the way I live to make somebody else comfortable.
But this isn't the same thing. This is an outgoing message. This is people saying literally, "We're coming for your children." That's literally the message. We're coming for your children.
To teach them to be fair. But that's the thing is you're taking it out of context. You're lifting a line and forgetting about the rest.
I know what the message is. It's what everybody else is saying. They hear them. Look, even my own mother thought it was saying that stuff, and I tried to explain it to her, and she didn't understand.
Kazoo.
Okay, you can't say this is just about some people who are already bigoted. This is a terrible message that was put out.
Okay,
it was bad messaging, bad optics.
Why is it a terrible message? It's a terrible message to say we're going to teach your children to be compassionate and fair.
Tolerant.
That's a terrible message. That's a terrible message.
It goes on to say that, hey, your kids are going to see things that you're not going to like online, and that's too bad. Ha ha.
And that's reality. And that's the truth.
It is the truth, but that's not the way. If you message it that way, it's just like okay, I've given this example before. Okay, Big Red or whatever her name is, Chanty Binks. I don't know what her real name is, right? She said a number of things that has a bunch of people pissed off because of the way she said it. If you actually listen to what she was saying, she was actually being in support of the men's rights activists that were around her. But they didn't know that because of her attitude. Attitude makes a big difference. Perception makes a big difference. Perception is why Hillary lost.
Okay, so
I
here's
have a-
I have
I
a,
have a
no. Let
question.
me ask a question. I have a question for Kazum. Okay, so you said your own mother didn't misunderstood the message. I believe you because she's your mother and you were there. So here's the question then. Now, did your mother then become negatively disposed toward the LGBTQ community or not? Based on that,
She probably has a little bit more negative idea of LGBT activism since then. Yes.
but do you think that was going to make her in any way, LGBTQ phobic?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay. So then, no. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Because I'm her son.
No, but that's the whole point, though. But in other words, the people that are not bigots are not going to be negatively impacted. They might go, "Oh, that's not a good way to say it," but that doesn't mean that they're going to be negatively impacted in a way that is meaningful. The people that are going to be angry already were there. That's the whole point. We're not turning it's if you're trying to make the case that some people who were on the fence about being LGBTQ phobic, this is going to push them over. I don't believe that that's the case. There's a lot of people who, we call them the jack-offs, just asking question people. These are people who pretend to be skeptical. They pretend to not have to have a position, but they actually do. They're dishonest people who basically put out the idea that they're these middletarians, again, that they try to pretend they're on the fence when they're really not. But you can tell by their statements and their questions that they already have a position. They just want to pretend that they do because it seems noble to sound like you're being open-minded even when you're not.
Well, I mean, even if these people already slightly felt that way, okay, now they go full board on their bigotry and they spread that bigotry. So the end result of this is the spread of bigotry, and that's the problem.
I don't believe that more people are going to spread it than were before. I
Yeah,
don't believe it.
My goodness!
I don't believe that
Oh
either.
my goodness!
I don't believe that either.
And here, because here's the thing too. Okay, we talked before, about the BLM thing. So there was a lot of people that were nominally on the left who, nominally support, Black liberation and Black people not getting murdered in the street, that really, really hated the whole BLM message and castigated us and chastised us. And people that did that, basically, they were more concerned about the message than they were probably not real activists in the first place, because people who were activists spent time trying to get people to understand. The people these middletarians who tried to play, oh well, blah 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 blah, and soften the message. So I don't really think that that's a valid concern.
But we've already talked about how the left is really bad at messaging, like ACAB. Right? All cops are bastards. It doesn't really mean every police officer is bad, but the general public's going to think that's what the message is. If people say defund the police, people are going to assume that it means totally defund the police. Our messaging is bad. It's bad. We're bad at it. We really are.
I think that there may be some merit to that Democrats are not great at messaging, but I think that in itself is bad messaging. That we can't get anything right is bad messaging. What are you gonna say, Mike?
I've been having a problem with messaging and perceptions. I didn't understand Raven's story. I just couldn't picture it. I was just hoping for a demonstration.
He's just looking for some side move. See, the other thing too, and I saw a thing about this recently, actually, where somebody was basically talking about, when we give into this kind of discussion, this discussion is actually counterproductive, because now we're giving in to the other side, and that's a mistake. So, if someone has a stupid response to a message, just tell them they're wrong and move on, and don't get into a debate. It's just like the people, how many atheists do we know waste time still arguing over the definition of fucking atheism and atheist, as if that was the key issue. Every time
whether or not babies are atheists.
Right, exactly. So every person who does that
had to go there, didn't you? You just had to do it.
Yeah, any person who does that is wasting time, and it's a waste of your time and my time and Raven's and Paul's and Mike's and everybody in the audience's time, because it's a worthless argument. to have. So don't engage that argument. Move on. It was a funny joke because if you look at kids, look because you want messaging. Look at what the right wing does. The right wing puts out a bunch of terrible messages. However, when they get called on it, they dismiss it, they ignore it, and that's how they get their message across because they confidently.
That's their superpower.
That's right. They confidently dismiss all the negative press that they get.
Isn't that what we're doing right now? Isn't that where we dismissing the bad messaging?
Doubling down. Yeah,
yes.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And what did we say before about Raven and people bringing up atheism? She doesn't hide from it. She doesn't run from it and let them turn that into a stain. She says, yeah, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
Well, one of the things that's a problem right now is we have rising fascism. Okay?
Yes.
We have rising fascism on the right, and we do not need to give them any more ammunition. We don't need to be giving them ammunition.
I hear you, man.
But the thing is, we can't hide either.
But this is not an issue of just hiding. This is a blatant
It
message.
is. It is.
No, it isn't. This is ridiculous.
Because you just said we shouldn't say these things, or we shouldn't allow. That's bad, man. We should just be quiet because we don't want people to come after us.
But we shouldn't go out of our way to piss people off either. That's stupid.
Isn't that the point of protest, though? Isn't protest supposed to be deliberately provocative?
Yes.
By saying we're coming for your children,
a protest is supposed to have an actual message.
By saying we're coming for your children,
have a message, Kazoom. We're going to teach your children to be compassionate and fair.
Right.
That is a damn good message.
By using the term, we're coming for your children, they're playing on very specific fears. And in my opinion, they're showing these people their bigotry right in front of their face.
Right. Plus,
that's my opinion. I know that I'm like hopelessly far off to the left, but and I see it as a protest, and it's a good thing. It's supposed to be provocative.
Well, plus the thing. Kids, think about what you said before. What's the raison d'etre right now? Owning the libs, pissing off the libs. They go out of their way to piss us off, to piss on our Cheerios, to step on our heads.
So that means we do the same thing back?
Yes!
No, that's the wrong answer.
No.
Kazoom, the reason why Paul's right is that none of the people who were pissed off about the song are offended that they think that trans people are coming for their children. None of them are saying, hey, wait a second. I never thought that trans people were coming for my children, because they do think that.
Yeah, they already thought that.
They already had that thought in their head, and that's why they're offended.
I just don't think that the best. If these people are never, if we know these people are never going to get an understanding towards our side, you don't provoke them and make them more angry and nastier. That's just stupid.
Yes, you do.
No, yes. Yeah, my name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you. Thank you, Peach. Thank you. So you know what happens now when someone tries to come at me with BLM, like, oh, wait, because they try to do this thing of, oh, you're saying all Black Lives Matter more, or those do the all lives matter. They say all lives matter. I say, I'll say to me, I'll say, prove it, and I get in their face and say, prove it.
Okay, what happens? What happens if over the next 2 years? What happens if there's an extreme rising of gay bashings and bashings of trans people?
It's already here. It's already happening.
So if it increases, it's not an issue. You gotta be kidding me.
Of course, it's been
increasing for years. It's on the rise. It's increasing.
Yes, and we don't need to do things to make it increase even more. What? That's crazy.
So we should hide. So we should hide.
No, I'm not saying we should hide. My God. Are you saying that the only choices are to either hide or to tell people things that offend them?
You're trying.
What the hell? That's not a binary situation.
You are trying to accommodate people.
But telling people that teaching their children to be compassionate and fair should not offend them.
But that's not what the message that they hear.
But there's nothing you can do about that, Kazoom.
Yes, there is. They could have said the message in a different way.
Like, well, how? Tell us how. Tell us. No. I want to hear how. I want to hear how telling people we're going to teach your kids to be compassionate and fair could be done in a better way. I want to hear your answer. Because every
It
time
would, it would be it would be it would be to say that the schools are going to teach these things, that society is going to teach these things, not that gay people are coming for you.
gay people are part of society.
But they're not. Oh my God! I'm gone. I'm out of here. Bye.
Oh, Kazoom, I'm
Whatever.
sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I don't care.
What do you have to say?
No. That didn't have to get to that pitch. You know.
What I
Because
have
he doesn't want to listen. That's the whole point. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah, but it doesn't
Okay,
have to get to
here's
that
the thing:
pitch.
if you tell somebody, you tell them you just said the sky is red, and they say, "No, I didn't say that." Yeah, that's a conversation that's going to end with them rage quitting.
So, what I have to say about this is the reason why kneeling on NFL football fields was an issue was because that wasn't the type of protest that the racist white people would allow. Right? It went, too far into their comfort zone. You have to push a little bit into their comfort zone.
yeah.
Right? Especially when it's your own body autonomy and your own voice that you're using, and they're just choosing to react to when they don't have to.
Well, this is what I was trying to get to kids before he dropped out, is that there's no amount of message that they are going to find acceptable. None. And the fact that they freaked out over Kaepernick just as badly as they freaked out over, BLM marches and riots and all that tells me that there was no acceptable method. And it's foolish to twist yourself into knots to try to accommodate people who are never going to accommodate you.
So in Florida, as you guys must know, they passed a law earlier this year or maybe late last year. One of the laws about protesting said that if people are blocking the roadways, you're not going to get busted for, hitting them with your car, basically. Right. And then this weekend just gone, I think there was a Republican protest in Florida where they were deliberately blocking the roadways. And of course the police were right there and no arrests were made for blocking the roadways. And so there's clearly a double standard going on how the laws are going to be applied.
Exactly.
And the law isn't the law if it's only applied to one group but not the other group.
Exactly. So that's the point I'm trying to make to him, is that it's like you're not playing with reasonable people. I thought he understood this, which is why he stepped away from it more recently. But again, he's still trying to play that fucking game of catering to people. It doesn't matter how much. Think about just in politics. Remember when Obama was president, Obama, the Republicans wanted a certain amount of tax cut. They wanted this, that, and the other thing. He gave them more than they asked for, and then some. And they still voted against it because it wasn't about getting those things. It was about saying no.
Sure. Look, I understand that you can't compromise with people who aren't arguing in good faith, but I think Kazoom was arguing in good faith. And I think he, and I honestly think, he clearly had very strong opinions about what we were just talking about. And I just don't think, huh?
I was just going to say, I think the fact that he was arguing in good faith is actually the problem.
Well, no, see, because we've all known Kazoom a long time. I've known Kazoom now for 8 years, and Kazoom tries very hard to be open-minded and see other sides of the argument besides the one that he might naturally emanate from himself. And I personally respect that kind of approach to trying to see things from the other side. Maybe y'all think he's too accommodating for the other side of the argument. That you can think that if you want to, but I see where he's coming from. He's trying to be open, and trying to give the other side their feelings as consider their feelings as valid, whether we think they're valid or not. And obviously, y'all know how I feel about this thing. My whole thing is, even if people are offended, it's not the end of the world. It's one song. It's going to come and go, and life moves on, man.
Well,
I think it's. I think it's just non-consequential. I really do. Some people might be upset about it and make a big fit. And in the social media circles he moves in,
it's only slightly worse than the Christian side hug.
Oh yeah. Well, and like I said, the other side, see, which everybody praises their messaging. They seem to get their message out, and their message is "fuck those guys." That's literally their message, is "fuck those guys." So why should I worried about offending people who that's their job, that's their goal, is to torque me off? to try to step on me and hurt my feelings. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to do it on purpose, but I'm sure as fuck not going to worry about it. And I'm not going to play their games anymore. I'm not going to accommodate them because they can. You cannot accommodate somebody who's not willing to be accommodated.
I feel like the real argument here is that the choir did not think that they were doing the wrong thing. They did not think that what their actions were doing was going to lead to more harm being done to gay people being beat up all over the country. They didn't think that they were going to increase that. But we have a disagreement here as to what sort of things might make that stuff increase. So
here's what I feel. There was a time, in my lifetime and in Paul's lifetime and Raven's and probably all of ours, where it was socially unacceptable to be openly bigoted.
Sure.
Somewhere along the line, that has kind of stopped. But the thing about it is, and the reason why is because we entertain the idea that we have to listen to all these fucking ideas and treat them with respect, and we don't. And treating those attitudes with respect is part of the problem. Those are unrespectable views. So I'm not going to respect them, and they don't respect anybody else. So it doesn't make any sense. We need to get back to a point where being a bigot, an open bigot, is socially unacceptable, that there's a social cost for being a bigot and saying the quiet parts out loud.
Right. I agree with that almost wholly. I would just say, things have changed an awful lot, and I don't necessarily think I personally would describe it the way you would subscribe it. I mean, I think the internet has a lot more to do with, my internet name's Got That Funk, and I've been Got That Funk for 14 years on the internet in total on one platform or another. I'm not a troll. I never have been a troll, but a lot of people do troll because the internet gives people an anonymity that they don't enjoy in their everyday, face-to-face world. And I think because people spent a lot of time, especially people of Generation Z, growing up on the internet, and there's a place where you can basically be an asshole without consequences, it has brought the inner asshole out of everybody. I remember once upon a time where it only happened to people when they were driving a car. People were really nice most of the time. Give them a car to drive and put them in traffic and see how nice they are. So, and it's the same thing. You've got the protection of the windshield, and people can't necessarily hear you cursing at them and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you might say some nasty ass shit in your car to people because they're not going to hear you and there's not going to be a consequence. It brings something out of us, a side of us that we might not even like to acknowledge. And I think the internet does what a car does to you times 100. I personally think that's where an awful lot of this more sort of willingness to be a bigot, because you can get away with it on the internet in a way. And now people, their fear of it is gone because they have found social acceptance, like you were just saying, on the internet. And therefore, they're less afraid of it in their real life. I personally blame most of it on the internet because I have seen it rise. In correlation is not causation, granted, but that's just where my head goes.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, Paul. But I'll point out this. This is the other thing that the internet does provide, though. It also provides the tool where we can find out who people are and we can expose them. Now, the right wing calls that cancel culture. I call it accountability culture. And basically restores back where we had before. So that's the whole thing. Because again, the right to have free speech does not, shield somebody from social consequences. So, for instance, there was a Karen who flipped out the other day in the Short Hills Mall, very close to where I live. We know we know her name. We know where she works. Because what she did was unacceptable. She weaponized her whiteness to try to get a black person arrested or worse. And we're not putting up with that shit. So that's the flip side. So I think you're right in what you say, but I think there's another side to that equation as well. And that's the reason why the people who I won't say that certainly there's bigots on the left too, but I'll say that the side that's more bigoted and more hostily bigoted is afraid of accountability. That's why they've labeled it cancel culture and tried to make it out to be a bad thing, because they don't want to be held accountable for all the shit that they do. They want to remain anonymous and get away with the shit that they do.
So I want to say that the people, the choir who wrote the song, that was obviously stupid. I do believe that it was stupid. But the fact that they've done it now, I'll defend that. And apparently the lyrics of their song are defendable. Exactly the way that I've done so far. This is what their message actually is. Sure, it's easy to pull apart. The right, they love doing that shit. They'll pull everything apart. They'll take everything out of context. I mean, that's normal stuff for them.
Yeah.
The right will complain about a purple Teletubby.
Yeah. Yes. But getting upset and allowing them to run the entire conversation on it.
Right.
And by caving to their, even if they're not like direct demands, but just caving to their outrage. No, that's a mistake. That's a big mistake.
I guess I look at, I brought up the ACAB thing earlier, the ACAB thing earlier, right?
Which is also
Don't
stupid.
you think that if people said the message that the system of policing is messed up and it makes everyone working under it part of that system, if someone words it like that, don't you think that can reach a lot more people than saying all cops are bastards?
No, and actually, why? Here's why. Well, let me explain.
It doesn't work that way.
Think about how convoluted. What you say. Your description of the problem was a more accurate description of the problem. I agree. And think about how many words it took to say that, and how ineloquent that is. People respond to slogans. Think about Bernie and the 1%. Now the whole thing is, now 1% works and it's good. Now some annoying people said, well, actually the problem isn't the top 1%, it's actually the top 10% and I told those people to shut the fuck up because you're getting away with a good slogan. So that's the whole thing, is that you're anytime you generalize, you're going to be loose. There's no other way to tell. In fact, if you generalize and you're not being loose, then that's a problem, because then you're actually applying something universally. But the thing is that in order to say something, people respond to slogans and they don't respond to long ass explanations, which is why you're muted. That's why the left wing message doesn't play, because you're muted. This is why the left wing message doesn't play, because we sound like professors and they get bored and they don't want to listen to what we're saying.
Well, some slogans are counterproductive. Some slogans do more damage than they're worth. Some slogans really suck.
Example.
In politics, it's not the same as advertising. Politics is not the same as advertising. Not all publicity is good publicity. That's just the truth of it.
I agree with that. And it's not as if, this song was meant to be provocative, and I think that's okay. Sometimes comedians are meant to be provocative. Sometimes musicians are, whatever, films, whatever, it happens. And I think if it pisses people off, that's also okay. They're going to be fine.
I'll get back to the Bernie thing. Before Bernie was a presidential candidate, there were Democrats out there. In fact, the Democrats, I think it was either 2012 or 2014. They put out this party slogan, and it was like this 14-word, like Snorefest. It captured the exact essence of what Bernie was going after, but it was said in an ineloquent way because it was wordy. And Bernie just said the 1%, and everyone goes, and that resonated with people. Why? Because it's short and to the point. Slogans have to be short and to the point. If you have a description and you got to put an and or a but in there, forget it. You lost everybody.
I've been hearing the term systemic racism my whole adult life. And when I was a young man, I really thought it just pertained to the criminal justice system and to a different degree, the educational system. As I grew older and learned more about what it means, basically, I understand that it's also to do with housing and everything. Getting a loan and all sorts of other stuff that I personally used to take for granted, until I learned about how far into our culture racism really pervades. And like we said this 8 months ago, whatever, in the Breakfast Club, but it's not systemic racism. Racism is the system that we live under. And so that's a good slogan, right? But again, that would get a lot of pushback. You know, the system isn't racist. Racism is the system. That should be easy to understand, but they'll twist it. They'll twist it.
Even though it's true.
Yeah.
You know? Well, see, actually, what's kind of funny, and here again, here's how this can work, where we can kind of work against them. So, you brought up the, defund the police. So I've seen multiple memes that right wingers put out there where it shows some person who's mentally unstable doing something that mentally unstable people do that's dangerous. And they're like, oh, ha ha, what are you going to do? You're going to get a counselor out there? And then there was a counter meme that said, like, yeah, that's exactly what counselors do. That's their job. And they do this shit on a regular basis every fucking day. So thank you for asking the question. Have a good meal, drive through. I
mean, there's a group of people who, when they say defund the police, they mean, take all money away from, policing and to abolish the police. There is a fringe element of that. Yeah. I mean, it exists. It does. And that's always going to be the case. They were always there. They were always around. But defund the police really means reform. It's severe reforms, but they're massive reforms, but they're reforms. And the reason why they don't say reform the police is because we've been saying reform the police for decades and decades, and it never happens. So they changed it to defund, because it gets people's attention. And it's like, and now we're going to get the reforms that we desperately need. Because we've changed the slogan. Is it the best way to go about it? I don't know. I don't think so.
But saying reformed, it wasn't working. So,
right.
And that's the thing. It's kind of like, I've used this analogy a lot in a lot of different contexts, but like restaurant owners, when their restaurants like in a spiral, it's basically, their customer base has aged out. They've been in business for 30 years. They used to be a hot business, and now they're on the tail end. And they're so afraid to change what they're doing because they're so afraid to lose the current customers. The problem is the current customers aren't paying the bills. In this context of politics, the old slogans and the old approaches aren't working. So you got to try something else. And so sometimes you got to turn over the apple cart. And does that mean that sometimes we'll stumble? Sure. But again, the other side does that too, and they stumble and they act like that's what they wanted to do. Like, and so we need to learn from that. This is the same thing too, when I've said too about politics, about the long game. The left has not played the long game in 40 years. We're always playing the short game, and not the long game. The right wing plays the long game. They'll vote for people that they despise because they'd rather get that person because they know that means ultimately getting them in power versus the other side, where the left goes, oh, well, I don't like the way that person dresses, and that person's voice is bad, and blah, 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 bitch. And then we lose. And I like what's that show that with Jeff Daniels? The liberals are so smart. Why do they lose so fucking always? That's why, because we don't play a long game.
I agree that the left doesn't play the long game, but I also think the right doesn't play the long game. So I disagree with you on that one, because I mean, like, basically politicians have, for most of my adult life, don't seem to really be focused on the future in terms of, like, I mean, climate change is a reason.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. See, for them, the long game is being in power. So they have played the long game, and they are
okay. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So that's so their long game is now the left. Now I would argue that the left, if the left played the long game and was in power, would actually be doing something with priorities that matter, at least to us anyway, because we actually have beliefs. As we said earlier, they don't have any beliefs anymore except their cult in power.
Well, I mean,
the Democrats.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the Democrats are mostly neoliberals anyway, so they're not going to really do anything towards the left either. So,
yeah, I keep hearing that, but I don't.
I was just about to say what's going on right now with the voting rights bill, and everything that's going on in Texas, which we were referencing earlier. this is all pretty crucial. And if they don't basically pull out all the stops, and that obviously means getting rid of the filibuster, if only for this one exception. Even I don't really know how that would work, but we can't have a situation where, like a month or two ago, there was that vote, and like the 35 Republicans voted against it, and that basically won. And when you can have 50 whatever people vote for something and 35 people vote against it, and the 35 people get what they want, that's something's fundamentally wrong with that system,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to have a filibuster, it needs to be the talking filibuster.
Right. And see, that's the thing. That's what I kind of feel that what people should be trying to do with Joe Manchin is to not, because he's not going to go along with no filibuster. He's just not. That's very clear. But someone could make the case to him that, well, the talking filibuster, that was actually our tradition up until, what, a decade or two ago? So
maybe more, but yeah.
Yeah, so we'd be restoring the filibuster to what it originally was. And if they did that from that perspective, they might get him to go along because then it's still there.
That should actually be the slogan for the
Restore the filibuster.
Yeah, restore the filibuster. They shouldn't be talking about getting rid of it. They should be saying restoring the filibuster. Let the other side try to argue against that.
Right.
Hey! I just wanted to say when you were talking about what's a better message when it comes to the police, it would, to me, the better message would be reimagine the police.
Okay, that would work. I think that's a good one. I would definitely go along with that.
Positive.
And it's positive.
I would like to add to the filibuster that each hour they must finish one glass of water.
Yeah, but see,
politicians.
But they're just gonna have Texas catheters, and it won't matter. But then they just have to make sure that they got really, really big bags in their legs to get all the urine. Actually, Actually, you have to forget Texas catheters. Require them to use Foley catheters.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know the difference, a Texas catheter is also called like the condom catheter. That goes over and around your dick. The Foley catheter goes up the hole.
I learned a new fact.
I'm just saying, Joe right now is advocating for the penis rape of politicians.
Yes.
That's what I heard.
Male politicians have been raping too many things for too long. Maybe it's time.
Raven, change sides while you still can. Just keep running.
Well, she did.
Politicians.
She chose definitely the more compassionate side of humanity.
Yeah. Wow.
But so anyway, so just because we know we got heated before, but I love you no matter how heated we get. So just want to make sure.
I thought you were gonna pop.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you came back, Kazoom. That's for sure.
All right.
Anyway.
I had to step away for a moment because I was just like, I'm yelling. Okay, this isn't good. Okay.
I'm Robin Leach. I'm yelling. I don't know why.
That was actually a pretty quick moment. I would have had to have walked away longer if I did that. If I walked away, that was pretty quick. That was good.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So I'm going to actively promote Reimagine the Police because I do think that is a better slogan.
That's a good slogan for sure. Personally, I am on the other side, man. I'm like, abolish the fucking police. Let's just start over completely. Let's have a civil protection force, and let's also have other like public services to do other stuff that people typically call cops.
Wait.
That's reimagining.
Abolish the police, and you want to have a civil protection force now?
Hey.
We just abolished the police. You want to start a civil protection force?
Something that's just for that. That's not. That you can have police as well. Maybe I don't even know, but I mean something where you can call people like that aren't going to show up with guns and basically pop off. I mean, I really think that's important.
Citizens on patrol.
Huh?
Citizens on patrol. Cop.
just like the movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
With probably similar results.
Pink elephants on parade. Okay.
Well, it's kind of like the idea of I remember seeing this idea that a public service as far as being in Congress would actually be a drafted position, so that you could be drafted to be in Congress and make the terms would all be 1 year, and you could be drafted to be in Congress. Oh shit, I gotta serve Congress.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I used to have this big long speech about how my idea for how to cure America was to we still have a representative democracy of the people, by the people, and for the people. But instead of an elective democracy, we have a selective democracy where everybody has to do some kind of public service for, I don't know, let's just say 4 or 5 years. Just pick a number, whichever. And it could be anything. It could be in your state government, your national government, could be in the military, could be, for infrastructure, whatever it is. But you do your public service and then you're out. So at some point, everybody's part of the government.
Well, I think that would definitely engender a different attitude toward the government, because one of the things that makes
there's no re-election, so there's no reason to be corrupted.
Right. Well, the other thing too is that something that I always find troubling. I'm not going to pick on all libertarians, but something I've heard from many libertarians. This is something Brock used to talk about. The idea is he hated the idea of like government solutions because the idea was giving the government power. And my point is always, we're the government. If the government has powers because we gave it to them, and maybe we gave too much or too little or whatever, but it's us. And when we start looking at the government as some monolith that's separate from us, it's really, I feel, a way to divorce ourselves from the responsibility of what happens.
Right.
So the reason why we have the government and this is always true, we get the government we have because a large portion of us don't pay attention, don't participate, don't care. So we end up with, it's the people who are motivated or, enough, are the ones that get their way. And so then we'll complain about the outcome because but then we say, oh, well, that was the government. No, it was you, because either you voted for bad people or you didn't vote at all, whatever happened, or you didn't hold the people who got voted in accountable in any meaningful way. But and this is what creates the cynicism that actually makes it worse, because when people start believing it doesn't matter, then they stop. Then if they were inclined to participate, they tend to stop, and that's dangerous. And I think that we want more participation. And one thing I always try to tell people who think like voting doesn't matter, I'll say, yeah, voting's not the only way to get things done. However, if voting didn't matter at all, there wouldn't be forces spending so much time, effort, and money to prevent people from voting.
That's exactly right. And the efforts to change how people vote in America right now are so widespread and flagrantly non-democratic. I can't believe that there's really. I mean, we should be marching. To be honest, we should all be marching right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about it really, because it's like we just hope the government seems to do something about it, and if they don't, oh well, then what? What's the backup plan for the government not being able to do something about it? Because I think we need a backup plan, because what if they can't do something about it because the other side's more prepared?
Well, and to that same regard, what did I say before about the people who complain, oh, the Democrats aren't doing enough? If you ask them, well, I want to ask them, well, what are you doing? Did you write to your House representative? Did you write to your senator? Did you write to the president's office? Did you do anything? Did you go to a march? Did you go to a town hall meeting? Anything? No, you just sat back. And this is something that Jack actually acknowledged. One of the things when Obama was president, there were people on the left who voted for him who were disappointed later because they just sat back and thought, oh, well, Obama, we elected Obama, our job is done. No, the job never fucking stops. It never fucking stops. And I remember when the whole argument about the public option, which I think everyone on this panel is in favor of the public option, when right wingers, they that's another thing too. They call the representatives, they call their senators, they write, they march, they protest, they go to town hall meetings. And I remember the reporting at the time was that there was a lot of noise against a public option and very little noise in favor. Not that there wasn't, if you check polls, the polls all say, yeah, there's like 60-70% of people in favor of public option. But who was actually knocking on the door of their representatives to say, yeah, I want that shit. We need that shit. You better fucking vote for that shit. It wasn't there. And politics are all politicians, even the best of them, are craven. So they listened. A whole bunch of people said no, and a small number of people said yes, because that's who they listen to. They don't care about the polls. That doesn't mean anything. Because the only poll that matters is the ones that show up to election day. And the people who call, they are reliable voters, and so they get attention.
Well, once upon a time, politicians did seem to care about the polls. Right. I mean, this is an interesting thing to me. Now, what you just said is what they always say. Oh, they only have to care about the poll on election day. The other polls don't matter. Yeah. Well, that has basically allowed them to not have to justify their positions. So I don't have to care what the polls say. Okay. Well, there you go. So if you don't care what the polls say, you don't care if you're popular or not, and then you just care that you can be guiding the argument as we approach the election. So as long as whoever's guiding the narrative when the election happens is probably going to dominate the election.
Yeah. And this is true. This is the reason why, one of the things that an error on Bernie's part, I don't think I want to restate. It's not an error. Okay. Bernie engaged young people, and that was a good thing. But Bernie also depended on young people to show up to vote. And that was a mistake because they didn't. Not any no worse than before, but no better than before. So maybe in 2020, but certainly not in either primary, because he depended on, even though all the research says that young people just don't really, you get about a third of them that get out there and vote, and that's every election going back for like 1 billion years. So what's happening with politicians is the same thing that's happened. You notice how customer service is way worse now than it was 20 years ago. Because companies did research, and the research found that to give good customer service costs us this much, but if we spend this much, we don't lose that many customers, so we don't have to fucking care about providing good customer service because most people are just going to lump it and just take whatever we give them, and then they stop, and that's what they did. And that's what politicians have done, the exact same thing, because they use the same marketing and same research people to tell them the same number, the same result.
I hate going to the fucking store these days for that reason. I get so fucking annoyed. If I did the shit that most of these people do when I go into a public place, if I did that when I was working there, I would have lost my job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah, I forget. I was on the way home last night. I went down to Philadelphia to drop something off for a friend, and we hung out. And on the way back, I was getting a check engine light, so I wanted to have my oil checked. So I stopped in gas station, and then I asked the guy, "Hey, can you check my oil?" And we have full service in New Jersey. You're not allowed to pump or whatever. Although I just say that I don't have to. And he was like, the attitude I got from the fucking guy was like I pissed in his fucking face or something. Now, I still tipped him. The reason why, even though he had a piss poor attitude, I'm hoping that, okay, he did something. I gave him a reward. I'm hoping at least he'd get the idea that, hey, customers aren't, shitheads that you should be an asshole to. That maybe if you're cool to people, that maybe, they'll return the favor. Because I would like to return back to the days that Raven's talking about, that where if you fuck around, you lose your job.
So I've been traveling a lot recently, both in the UK and in St. Louis. I was in St. Louis in May and just last week as well for a little while, and I've noticed that. Because now in St. Louis, mask mandates are lifted. Like again, only the servers are wearing masks, and even not even in all the stores. Like depends on where you're at. But eating out, I've noticed just in the past 6 months, it must be 20% more expensive, and I'm thinking that's because it's not just that they're trying to recoup lost profits from the previous year. I think basically they've had to pay staff better, and if that's the case, I'm all for it. I don't mind the price going up a little bit if it means people are actually getting the wages. But does it mean that? Is that what's happening? Because restaurants were having a hard time hiring people back.
That's a big part of it. There's I was reading an article about this recently, and there was these stores complaining about not being able to get people back and calling everybody lazy and all this shit. And then they had some other owners of stores and small chains saying, well, they raised their wages and then they're fully staffed and everything's doing well. I think it's the workforce has finally had enough of the bullshit. Because you think about how many people got let go with no compensation, no severance, nothing, and so people are like, no, if I'm going to go back, and plus a lot of people have actually tried to start their own business. They said, fuck it, I'm not going to work for somebody else. I'm tired of the bullshit, and I'm going to try to make my own thing. And so that's one misleading thing about the so-called shortage, because if people have come out of the workforce to actually start their own business, well, they're still in the workforce. They're just not looking to work for others. Because again, why are you going to work for somebody else at $7.25? You can do almost anything on your own and probably do better than that.
You could almost certainly beg more than $7.25 an hour in any American city.
Exactly. And this kind of goes to what Vegas was saying here about inflation. See, the thing is, again, I was watching Robert Reich thing the other day. He was saying the same thing that I had said, that the bulk of what's going on is either, there are wages going up in some sectors, and also in others that basically we're still not at full capacity. That if you look at, I don't remember the numbers offhand, so I'm not going to make them up, but we are not at full capacity as far as our output. I know this in my own business, that there are parts that you're usually stock that I'm waiting 2, 3, 4, even 6 weeks for. So what's ended up happening is that so all my projects are on a slow burn because I can't get all the parts in a reasonable amount of time because everything's back ordered because of the chip shortage, and then that just rolls downhill. And that drives prices up.
Yeah, I think Mike was itching to have an argument with you either about inflation and or Bitcoin. I can't really remember.
Well, I know probably both. I mean, I'm not really interested in, he said what he had to say about Bitcoin. I told him he's wrong, and I told him why. And I didn't have anything really new to add there. But yeah, inflation. If he was here, I would definitely talk more about it. But I do not believe that at least the bulk of the inflation now we're seeing is real, and that's another reason why the CPI has not really moved very much, because the core rate of inflation looks at a certain number of the staple items in the kind of the basics, and it evaluates the prices, and not just the absolute price, but also what's going on in those sectors. So if production is off for whatever reason, the price will go up, but that's not the same as inflation. Not really, not from the economic perspective. Inflation has a very specific meaning.
Well, I think that's what they're arguing is that because we're increasing the money supply, for example, with these child tax credits that have just been rolled out, which is what was the conversation was where just before you came in.
Yeah. So, well, see, the thing is when there's, I know this is the other canard whenever there's a minimum wage increase. Well, I got to see if I can find this chart, but there was this chart I saw years ago where basically it showed that when you raise the minimum wage, you get a short-term inflation rise, but in every single case, it always rolls back because the economy finds a new level.
Right.
So what ends up happening initially, there are actually companies that, what they'll do is if they were kind of behind it, they'll jack up things to kind of catch up. So like you said about the lost wages, the lost income from last year. Yeah, there's companies that are going to try to recoup some of that as much as they can. And then if they can be made whole, then that tends to slough up because then competitive forces come back in, and now you got to compete again against all your competitors.
Yeah, I think we obviously you don't want to have a situation where I think the way to cure it would be to pass legislation prior to raising the minimum wage, which basically ties the minimum wage to inflation, so that when inflation goes up, minimum wage goes up automatically. That way, when you then bump minimum wage up to $15 an hour from where it is now, they can't raise the prices without also raising it again past $15. So, it's correlative.
So here's one thing I want to bring up too, to kind of go along with what we're talking about. So I'm looking here at spot price on lumber. So the spot price, let me fix the chart here. So back in November, it was at 497. It peaked at 1686, almost 1700. And now it is back down to, it actually, it bottomed to 490. It's back now to 536, but it's still way off from the highs. So this was one of the things, building material prices are going through the roof. Yeah, they did for like 3 months and they're back down. So, but what happens is, of course, when the narrative is, there's runaway inflation, they're going to keep stoking it over and over and over, even when it's not true anymore.
So I have heard runaway inflation stories from a lot of fiat enemies and gold stackers. Not surprisingly, being somebody who gives therapy to people, I run into those types a bunch. Some of them have gambling addictions, actually, and some of what they said has been false since I was involved in the Occupy movement. It has not been ringing true, but I really do feel like that broken clock has its time to be right this year. Where their fears are actually going to come true. But it's like somebody who says the stock market's going to crash every year. One of these years, they're going to be right.
Right. So the thing is, though, remember, there's also, if you're just say you're a gold stacker, you have a vested interest in if you're strung out in gold, you have a vested interest in people believing that there's going to be runaway inflation and that people need to hedge gold. Now, here's something: oil. So everyone's like, oil prices are through the roof. Okay, let's look at that. So oil prices right now, the close was 71.49 on the NYMEX. That and that's up from the low. The low was in June of last year, and it was down to 23.55 a barrel. But if you look back at back in 2019, it was up around 70s, and even just pre-COVID, we were at 61. So it's only slightly up off the highs, and actually right where it was in most of 2018. So it's not in an unusual spot. It's just that when prices went down to $23 a barrel, a lot of production was shelved. A lot of plants were shelved and put on either shut off completely or put on low production. So they haven't ramped up yet because they need the price to get back up to where it was. So it's something where there was a glut, and now they're trying to create a shortage because they need to, because they're losing their ass at $23 a barrel. They're getting shit hammered.
Well, I think because the stimulus was not released in the Ben Bernanke helicopter way, where it goes straight to banks, the stimulus money was actually sucked up by certain industries. It's siloed in certain places where the CPI is not reflecting the actual, broader inflation that we're seeing. The housing market bubble just keeps on growing, right? And that is being fueled by the stimulus, because when people are buying just their necessities, it's going to business owners who are then buying property. When people are able to raise the rents because the price of rent keeps on going up, those people are then turning around and buying property with it.
Right, but again, it's not the housing bubble isn't being caused by the average everyday purchaser. This is people with lots of money who are vultures, who are sweeping in on there was a drop in housing prices, and now they're basically they went and bought everything up cheap and have created a shortage.
Mhm.
So don't confuse actual inflation with market manipulation.
One of those silos that's unfelt right now is Paul's friend Jeff Bezos. He's got another couple billion that came his way because of the pandemic, where people were actually buying like everyday, necessities through Amazon to be delivered to their door, and it enriched him beyond measure.
Oh yeah.
If he ever decided to spend that money, he could locally destabilize the economy at this point. He could buy a city. He is immensely wealthy right now.
Well, maybe a town. I don't know about a city.
He could totally solve homelessness in America.
But
he could literally buy every homeless person a house.
But see, here's the thing. That's true. Well, I don't know if you can buy every house. We certainly can deal with homelessness. Well, yes, he can buy all the homeless people dwellings. But the thing is,
he's what, 500,000 homeless people in the country.
Yeah, right. Yes, he can buy all them housing. But the thing is, he's not going to. No, because you know why? Because we already know. Because he's not doing that. Because he's going to fucking space. Because he doesn't give a fuck about any of those things.
Well, that's right. That's obscene to me as well.
And also, crashing the economy wouldn't help him. He doesn't want the economy to crash.
Hang on a second. I think there's a point where these oligarchs get to where they don't have to care. Inflation could be 1,000%, and he'd still have enough money to be like, it's fine. You know what I mean? There's nothing that can happen to the economy that will touch Jeff Bezos. Nothing.
There's also the used car market right now that is inflated because partly just because of the extra money, people wanting to travel and wanting to have a little bit more reliable cars creates the demand. And there's a shortage of chips for the new cars that we'd want to produce because they will have computer chips in them. So there's a perfect storm on that where used cars are up like 50%.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying, though. There's a shortage of new cars. So people who want to buy new cars can't buy them. So instead, they're paying premium on reliable used cars.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's not. Yeah, but the thing is, that shortage is it's not a systemic shortage. I mean, this is like a temporary shortage because, we're not back at full capacity.
The surveys of the public about their feelings about whether inflation is coming are at an all-time fear factor rating right now. So like the public belief is there in the inflation, right? I certainly think that the CPI is measuring the wrong things and that it's doing so intentionally, right? That it's actually whether you're on the right or left, it's part of our government's practice to tell people that the economy is moving along at that healthy 1 or 2% that we shoot for of inflation every year. Don't worry about a thing. I absolutely believe that to be true. But the CPI measures what it measures in order to keep people from panicking. And the types of food that you eat even can be changed on the CPI as far as what are the staples, which actually makes our diet worse because we're eating cheaper food because it doesn't take into account steaks.
Well, the average.
Yeah, and what is Paul seeing on the menu of the restaurants that are charging more and more for their food? He's probably looking at the steak prices.
Yeah, but is the average person looking at steak? Probably not.
No, they're looking at cornflakes.
Right, because that's why that's the core rate of inflation. Yeah.
But the reason they're eating the cornflakes instead of the steaks is because the price of steaks have left the ability of the common man to eat them all the time.
Yeah, but that happened ages ago.
Why? There's a goddamn glut of cows. This is Colorado, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, where you live. Well, yeah, that's like someone sitting in a pumpkin patch. What do you mean there's a shortage of pumpkins? The pumpkins all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a shortage of cows, though, right now. I saw an article on the news about how, I mean, in Arizona, there's been like a 23-year-long drought, and that they're not able to have enough water to feed their cattle. So they're selling their cattle off, and they're in pretty bad shape. And it should be driving the price of beef down. I'm not sure if it is or not. But, and this problem is widespread all over especially the Southwest, but, the whole West, for that matter, is on fire right now. Kazum, are there fires near where you're at?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I mean, there might be in Eastern Washington, but I haven't heard about many over here. So
There's a bunch of them in the Idaho Panhandle. I know that, and I know there's quite a few fires in Oregon as well.
We've had some ozone warnings on the traffic signals saying there's an ozone warming till 5 p.m. That's when you should go outside to mow your lawn, stuff like that.
That's weird.
Yeah, weird messages that we've been getting because
when I was driving in from St. Louis the other day, we're coming upon Denver, and you could not see the Rockies until you were you couldn't see the Rockies because the smoke was so bad. You couldn't see the Rockies from the airport, that's for sure. And you probably more than halfway between the airport and Denver before you could actually start to see just a silhouette of the biggest mountains. But you couldn't really see the actual mountains.
Every morning for a week, I've been waking up with allergies because of the smoke.
Right.
That's the biggest problem for me is the morning allergies. Turns out I'm allergic to mornings.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
It's really funny because I used to be such a not morning person. I mean, I used to joke that my brain doesn't function until 10 a.m. and it doesn't matter if I get up at 6 or if I get up at 9:58. My brain won't start until 10. So, but when I was a scaffolder, I had to get up at 5:45 every morning. And so you can't, that can't persist. After you do that, often enough, sooner or later, you will start to wake up. But yeah, I am definitely not a morning person, though.
That's one of the best parts about being a business owner is that I have more control over my time. So, because I generally don't, I'm not really functional till at least 9:30 in most cases. And I just work late, but yeah, it's nice that I don't have to worry about it. And I remember when I first was earlier in business, I used to feel like weird and guilty because I was so used to the model where I had to get up and be in the work, but somewhere between 8 and 8:30, and I wasn't doing that, and I was like, I kept looking over my shoulder, like was I going to be in trouble? Like somebody was going to, come along and say, you're fucking it up.
I've been dragged to that type of schedule myself because people don't want to see their therapist until they're done working. And so my availability hours, if I want to get more clients, I got to push them towards where people could get off work or at least get off work early to be able to get into those groups. And so I sometimes don't wake up till 10. Because nobody wants to see their therapist until after that. They want to go to work and work a normal day and not have me work a normal day.
Well, I can relate to that. When I had my body piercing studio, I didn't open until 10 o'clock because who in the fuck wants to get pierced before 10 in the morning, right? I mean, no one. So, yeah. And even then, I mean, you spend the first 2 hours waiting for someone to come in the door half the time, you know what I mean? Because it's only a small town, but.
Yeah. I think if you get a Prince Albert before 10 o'clock, you die.
Whoa, I mean, literally, no matter where you're going to get pierced, if it's going to hurt and you're going to throb, you want to make that throbbing in the fewest possible hours before you go to bed, right? So that's the way I would look at it, anyway.
Yeah. Totally different thing. Like those of you who know me already know this, but so if I was a little more testy than normal. Because I know I can be pretty testy in the best of times, but my dog Molly has cancer, and it's getting near the end. She had a seizure.
Sorry about that, Joe.
Yeah, she had a seizure earlier today. But she's a tough little dog. She keeps bouncing back, but it's her breathing is getting tougher. It's getting tougher and tougher for her. She's having more problems, and it's slowing her down. Like when the seizure happened, my friend Keith was leaving and she got excited to go to the door And when they left and they came back in to say goodbye because I gave them a TV and they took it out. She came back in. She came running over, and I guess she got her O2 dropped so low she fell down and then had a seizure. So yeah, we're figuring either tomorrow or Monday will end up being the end of the line. We don't want her to suffer because she's still doing okay, but as under the circumstances, but we don't want to. She's starting to get her breathing starting to get labored. And
I'm sorry you're going through that. It's not easy. You recently lost another dog, and then another dog a year or two before that, right? So it's not been easy.
Yeah,
those dogs are like family.
Yeah.
Do you keep anything from your old dogs, like collars or tags?
Yeah.
I got to get some paw print things with like ceramic for the dogs we have because they're getting up there in years.
My dad still lives in the house I grew up in. He's lived there for 50 years, and he has had a lot of dogs over the course of that time. And there's and cats as well. So we have a literal pet cemetery on the property, where all the dogs and cats are buried. Yeah.
We the service that came to the house for Blitzen when she died last year, they were really good. They handled all that. They administered the shot and everything, and then they took her out. They took care of the cremation. They did the paw print thing. They gave us a patch of her fur, and so they really did a nice little box of everything. So that was so I'm sure there's probably something like that. And it was so much nicer in the home rather than going to the vet because it was here in the house. It was her house. Everyone's here. The other dogs were here as well. So we all got to say goodbye to her in peace and not in a vet.
Mm-hmm. So you had your dog cremated. That interests me. And just as an aside, this is completely off topic from the dogs, but I mean, how many people here want to be buried versus cremated? I want to be cremated.
Cremated.
Generally speaking, cremated, although the one thing that gives me pause, no pun intended, is that Neil deGrasse Tyson made the point that if you get cremated, the potential energy in your body, you get burned, and most of that turns into entropy, so it's lost to the universe. Whereas if you get buried, your energy will get absorbed by the microbes and everything else, and then your energy will still be part of the universe.
It's not lost anywhere. It just isn't bound.
Well, it's lost for any useful purpose within the universe. That's what entropy is.
That's an awfully big presumption, man. No.
Well, based on the definition of work, so it's the loss of free energy to do work, based on the definition of chemistry and physics.
Well, then how about the where I forgot what it's called, where they bury someone? It's only legal in certain places where they actually bury them without any of the chemicals or any of that, and they actually get they decay and all of that in the ground.
That's better, and it doesn't waste as much stuff. But I guess that's becoming more and more popular, actually.
There's a place where you can do a funeral pyre and just have a bunch of sticks that your body gets laid on and then set it on fire and everybody gets to watch.
Like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of thought part of the original purpose of cremation is specifically to release the energy that is bound in your cells. You know what I mean? It's to free it. Well,
the thing is, anytime there's energy, like you're familiar with the concept of entropy, right?
Yeah. So
now, back in the day when we were all doing atheist videos, it was kind of a misunderstood topic because, people, there was the whole argument about, entropy prevents, evolution, and then it's free energy, and then that the Earth is a closed system, all that. All that the second law of thermodynamics says is that anytime that there's a thermal transfer of energy, some amount of that is lost it's a that there's a loss of free energy to do work that can't be recovered. It basically becomes the background, and so that's entropy, and so that's a calculable number, and so that it's more energy efficient for you to be buried, because the more of your energy will be reabsorbed by the biosphere than if you get burned.
I want the cremated ashes of my penis sprinkled in the punch bowl at a Republican gala, and I want someone in a choir to sing about the act so that it really pisses them off.
No pun intended?
No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think that cremation is more attractive because, one, you're not wasting a lot of space somewhere, and you're not spending a lot of resources. Like when these people get these like hermetically sealed things, so your body won't decay that much for the next 85 years. I mean, it's not like you're gonna get dug up and no one's gonna look at you, so it's kind of a waste of money.
I actually signed my donor card on the back of my driver's license. There's a little donor section. I'm hoping that they use a lot of the stuff and don't have to cremate it because there's a lot of me. I don't know if I fit in that machine. So
the medication I take, I can't be a donor or give blood or any of that crap, unfortunately.
There's certain parts I would hope that they just skip over using, but all the rest, it's pretty good stuff. Got some good eyes.
Not mine. Did you ever see that movie, All of Me?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Steve Martin films.
Yeah, mine too.
In fact, it probably is my favorite Steve Martin film. And then after that, maybe Roxanne. But yeah, All of Me is great. And there's the bit when he first discovers that half of his body's been absorbed by Lily Tomlin, and his acting, it's almost as good as that guy in Evil Dead when his hand is possessed.
Yeah.
But I mean, Steve Martin is absolutely amazing at it. But the guy in Evil Dead is by far.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that scene in Evil Dead when his hand is possessed and he's arguing with his own hand is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie in my life. I couldn't stop laughing. I missed so much of what happened after that because I just couldn't stop laughing.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that movie is drastically underrated.
I think it's a cult classic. I think everyone loves that movie, don't they?
I don't know. Well, the thing is, like when you see a list of like the popular Steve Martin movies, it almost never makes the list. And
sorry, I thought you were talking about Evil Dead. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Oh, no problem. Yes, and I think, like you said, it's one of Steve Martin's best films.
Yeah.
Another film that was underrated of his. Did you ever see Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid?
Yeah, and I really like it. I like the Carl Reiner or Steve Martin movies. My favorite one, though, is The Jerk, which is the first one. And obviously, because I was a big fan of Steve Martin's, I still have my Let's Get Small album, but I don't know what happened to my Wild and Crazy Guy. I might still have it. But when those were brand new, Jesus Christ, I was like 14 or whatever, and I thought Steve Martin was the funniest motherfucker I'd ever fucking heard. He was just so funny. And so when you watch The Jerk, if you listen to those two albums, most of the jokes in those albums come out in that movie. And so it's just hilarious. Everything about it, is so funny.
I don't need you. I just need this, and that's all I need. Well, except this. So that's actually been a running joke in the house here. Like, it's like if somebody says, "Okay, we need this," and then they think of another item, then I say, and the paddle game and the remote control. And making up my own lyrics to picking out a thermos.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember who made the joke, but when Steve Martin's films stopped being funny, I did not like Father of the Bride, and it pretty much made me stop watching Steve Martin movies.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the one with Mary Steenburgen, right?
I can't remember. No, that's the Parenthood I think you're thinking of. Parenthood's a really good movie. But as Father of the Bride, it's not like it's unfunny, but it's not funny enough. And it's the other one that ruined Steve Martin's
yeah.
credibility was when he tried to do Sergeant Bilko. I mean, what the fuck were they thinking, giving that to Steve Martin? You know,
Okay, yeah.
If they were going to get Steve Martin to do that, they should have given it to do him like in 1990 or something, not when they did it. He was way past being able to be Bilko, you know?
I see what you mean. Yeah, I was thinking of Parenthood.
Yeah, Parenthood. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, Father of the Bride was okay, but, you know. I mean, Martin Short was probably the best part. What the hell?
What is going on?
Flying high into the sky.
Okay.
Butterfly, butterfly, butterfly. Butterfly, butterfly.
There's something on the microphone.
Butterfly, butterfly.
That was weird.
Raven,
Yeah.
that was you picking up a song about butterflies.
Sounded like Butterfly. Getting static, Raven. Getting static. That was weird. That's still weird. Yeah, we're just getting.
I'm on
static
team
from you.
butterfly. You're on team motherfuck.
Butterfuck.
Oh, okay.
Sound like Butterfuck.
I have no idea what Raven is picking up, but it's annoying. Whatever song it is. I don't know if Raven's hearing it right now, muted to us, but like we don't hear it right now. But every time you unmute, Raven got hacked.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yay!
Yay, yes.
Better.
So my kid is upstairs watching nursery rhymes because, of course, he is. And that's what you heard, and I don't know why, because the mic
That's
is right
weird.
here.
Some kind of feedback.
So it was butterfly, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's weird.
Okay. Otherwise, you'd be a horrible parent.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it sounded like they were saying Butterfuck. I'm like, what the hell?
Is there anything wireless about your mic, or no? Didn't think so, but
So just something hit the right frequency, and it, you know.
CRB Vegas says planes, trains, and automobiles, and I say, "Fuck you, the Three Amigos."
Both of them are cool. Oh,
The Three Amigos has Chevy Chase in it, so it's automatically disqualified.
I mean, I would say Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is better.
you know, Chevy Chase used to be funny. He but he got pretty lame later on. Except unless he played a serious part, he plays a serious part well. Now,
I thought his Fletch movies were good. That's about it.
Which one? Oh, Fletch.
Yeah.
What about his movies with Goldie Hawn? You know, like
Is it one of those Fletch?
seems like old times.
Seems like old times. Yeah.
And there's
Oh,
one
yeah, that's
more.
a good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, the one where Goldie Hawn's. No, I'm starting to get confused now. Yeah, no, yeah,
What's the one with a midget? That the Bible salesman midget, and they thought he was someone else, and at the end of the movie, it's a there's this giant play, and the people ended up hanging from the ropes and stuff at the end when the scene is ended. Oh, never mind.
I don't know. Foul Play. That's the other one with Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase.
Right.
Yeah, because the other one was Seems Like Old Times. That was with Charles Grodin also. That was a fun movie.
Mm.
And
Charles Grodin is actually a lot funnier than he's just got a very sort of, he's always kind of the same. That's the thing. He does but his delivery works anyway, regardless of what character he's playing. But I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's a very underrated movie starring Dan Aykroyd, and Charles Grodin and Walter Matthau, and it's called The Couch Trip. And basically, Dan Aykroyd plays an escaped mental hospital patient who disguises himself as a radio therapist in Los Angeles. It's fucking hilarious. You should definitely look it up.
I know I've seen it. I know I've seen it.
Sounds like something I should watch.
Yeah, Charles Grodin plays the radio therapist, and Dan Aykroyd sort of accidentally takes his show over and becomes more popular. It's hilarious.
Another Dan Aykroyd movie that I think was underrated was Dr. Detroit.
I'm not sure if I've ever seen that movie.
Dr. Detroit he's this like regular guy, and he ends up, kind of unwittingly at first becoming a pimp. But the thing is that he treats all his prostitutes with respect. They have like medical and dental and all this kind of stuff. And then and that was not too. The time frame was right around the time that Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton did Night Shift. And I think that's what kind of hurt, because it was the same premise.
Right.
And so their movie came out first. So people were like, oh, you're just a ripoff of the other one.
Was it a ripoff of the other one?
Not really. I mean, the premise was the same, but how everything played out was completely different.
Right.
Like Night Shift was funny because basically, Michael Keaton is like the goofball and Henry Winkler is like the straight man. And, and basically Michael Keaton convinces Henry Winkler that they should do this, that they should become pimps. And they do, and it's like this whole big, thing between the two of them.
Okay. Impossible question for the whole group. We're going to go counterclockwise, starting with Kazoom and ending with me. All right? Your 5 favorite SNL actors or actresses, comedians, whatever, from the beginning till now. Just the 5. You got to keep it to 5. That's the hard part.
Well, I'm gonna have a hard time because I mean, it would just be some of the ones that I could remember. There'd be Steve Martin, and I liked it.
Never on SNL as an SNL actor. He just hosted a lot of SNLs.
Oh, well, that's a hard one. I'd have to look again. So I know it's been a while because so much of SNL has been so lame for so long, that their early stuff I don't get to see so much of it. So it's been a long time. So it's a hard question to answer.
Okay, fair enough.
Agent?
That was not a good answer. You didn't come up with anything.
I let him off the hook, man. I don't want to put the guy under too much pressure. He's had a hard evening, okay?
I want the pressure back on him. I want to know his first.
You give us at least a couple of names, Kazoom.
Well, I'll have to do some searching, and then I can name them off of a list because I can't remember the names right off the top of my head. So
just go that guy with the funny looking hairdo or something. Anything. Throw me some meat, man. Anyway, all right, Michael. We'll start with you and end with Kazoom. Carry on.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate Kate McKinnon and Tina Fey's political SNL skits. Those two I really appreciate. But Maya Rudolph right now I don't like as the vice president.
Really?
I don't really like her portrayal. I think she's pulling it off. I do like Cecily Strong, though. Some of the skits she's done during the news stuff. Keenan's been there for like forever. I feel like he's very underappreciated, and I really love him in the What's Up With That skit that keeps on coming back. And what happens to Lindsey Buckingham every time. Damn. Will Ferrell. I like Will Ferrell doing George W. Bush. I think he was the best at it. And that was Kristen Wiig. I think she should have had a bigger acting career since then. I don't like Pete Davidson. I don't like Andy Samberg except for his music.
Okay, Kazuma, if you notice what Michael's doing, that's like way more than 5, okay? And he hasn't even touched on like classic SNL yet.
Well, I mean, I was looking this stuff.
man.
I
I'm
was
just
looking
having a
this stuff
dig.
up, and they're showing Chevy Chase as being okay. Yeah, we got Chevy Chase, and it was Steve Martin that wasn't the original. So okay, Chevy Chase, John Belushi, Gilda Radner. I've never been personally a fan of Dan Aykroyd, but let's see.
Dude, them fighting words.
I just but there's God, who are some of the others? I'm still
Johnny
just
Bang
trying to look at a list, but at least I have a few now, so it's better than none.
I feel betrayed by Dan Aykroyd because I really liked his movie work and his SNL work, but now he's into alien conspiracy theories and selling his vodka, and he's just a completely different person than I would have wanted him to evolve into.
Wow.
He's got this Crystal Skull vodka that's all about like aliens are where we came from. We are star seeds, and
Really?
productions are real. Yeah. That's what he's all about now.
Wow. Well, what about you, Raven? Give me your 5 favorite SNLs over the course of the last 45 years.
Eddie Murphy, Gilda Radner, right? Kazum, Eddie Murphy. Come on, Gilda Radner, Kate McKinnon. Love Kate McKinnon. Seth Meyers. One more. I really can't stand a lot of the people that have ever been on SNL. A lot of them just drive me up the fucking wall. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I'm looking at the ones that Peach put out there, and like even like Fred Armiston. I can't stand him. So I don't know. All right.
Okay. All right. So my list, I've got Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, Kate McKinnon, Will Ferrell, and Tim Kazurinsky, with an honorable mention to Bill Hader.
Fair enough. Well, it's a really hard one for me as well. And I find it interesting because I am a huge fan of Kate McKinnon. I think of all the people who are players on SNL at the moment, she is like miles ahead in terms of her ability to just entertain, and she's genuinely funny, in my opinion. And so I'm a huge fan of Kate McKinnon. I'm leaving aside the craziness that Dan Aykroyd may or have evolved into. I mean, his work on SNL, as far as I'm concerned, is almost second to none, except for maybe Eddie Murphy, who would also definitely make my list. I can't deny Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, and I can't hardly barely pick between the two of them. But I mean, I think on SNL, Dana Carvey might be better than Mike Myers, but I like Mike Myers' career after SNL better. So it's a bit truck, but I mean, and then Gilda Radner, when I was a kid, man, she used to crack me the fuck up. I mean, my God, she was so funny, and even though a lot of her stuff was kind of sort of similar-ish, she was just so good at it and so convincing and authentic. And I love Gilda Radner.
Yeah, I think a top 10 list would be better because there's definitely some people there I would like to include that, I got to squeeze 5 in there. And like Bill Murray, I could negotiate. I could potentially replace him with somebody. But see, the thing is, like, to me, I like the people that are like the chameleons that really play like a ton of roles. So Dana Carvey, again, he was one that I really wanted to put on my list because, again, he's another chameleon. But Tim Kazurinsky, to me, was one of the most underrated people. And that was from like a kind of a dark time when the show wasn't that good. But he was like really the best thing going on the show. One of the things he did, and again, this is definitely something that wouldn't fly today, but he played this character it was supposed to be like an Indian guru named Having a Good Time, Vishnu we're here. And basically, he's answering these like supposedly these age-old questions or different things. Like these people say, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but you can't cross the bridge before you come to it. I don't care how fast you're going. stuff like that. And he had the character Jack Bodofsky. That was the guy with the signs. And it was all the play on words, like I remember, like if the subject was herpes, if you catch herpes from a Japanese person, it's jerpies, and all these different kind of plays on words and stuff like that. Because I've always liked people who do kind of wordsmithing. Rich Hall.
What was the guy's name? He died way prematurely. He's overweight, blonde guy. What's it? Chris
Farley.
Yeah, Chris Farley. He was amazing.
Yeah, he's another guy that would have to go in on that list. Who else? I just posted a link to it's a list of like every single cast member and where they are now. John Belushi, obviously, somebody has to be on. Would be on a list of top 10.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me not to include. But when I was thinking about my 5, I want to try to get as many from because it's been on for 45 years or more now, right? And there's a lot of people, as you rightly point out. I mean, the top 10 would be even hard to narrow it down to 10, really.
One person who I don't think he's a funny person anymore, but used to be incredibly funny, was Dennis Miller. And he's the one that really gave the SNL News credibility, because before him it was always just goofy shit, and then he actually did like real current events and put it in a funny way, and from him onward, it's always been like that.
Right.
So he really remade it in his own image.
I never really thought of starting at Dennis Miller, but I guess you're right, because before that it was a lot of fake, actually not real news stories, just
right.
pretend news stories. Like they're taking the piss out of the news by not talking about the real news.
Exactly.
And doing allegories maybe and stuff like that. But yeah.
Exactly.
I suppose that influenced Jon Stewart too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. So go ahead.
I'm just saying it's just a shame that Miller went so right wing and then just became completely unfunny.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember like one of the last things he did, and then he disappeared for a while. Well, he had his show on HBO, and that was funny. And one of my favorites was he did my 2 favorite shows he did on that show is one of the times he had George Carlin, and he had Carlin on like 3 times, but one particular one that was just over the moon. And then there was one with Norm Macdonald, and this was shortly after Norm took over the news on SNL. And one of the things they covered was smoking. And if you could find it, I'll have to see if I can find it. That sketch, that bit where they're talking about it, is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen. Because at one point Norm Macdonald was talking about how it's like like the big phallic thing, and you know what that means. And then he says, so he's like. And then he's talking about like a cigar that's like a big black dick, it was fucking hysterical. And again, that was when Dennis and Norm were both funny. Norm Macdonald was also good on the news. He got fired for going after OJ because Don Ohlmeyer, who is like the president of the network, was a friend of OJ.
I thought it was because he slipped up and said some bad words on air.
Not to my knowledge. What was great is like 8 or 9 months after he got fired, they had him back as a host. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I used to be on this show, but they fired me because I'm not funny. Now I'm back as a host. That either means that either I got way funnier, or the show sucks now. And he's like, well, which is it? Well, it can't be that I got that much funnier in 8 months. That's not enough time for someone to get more funny. So, it must be the other. So so the good news is I'm still not funny. Well, the bad news is I'm still not funny. The good news is the show blows.
Hey, listen, friends, I think we should wrap the live broadcast up, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the after chat in just a minute. I want to thank everybody in the side for a reasonable conversation. And Kira seemed to come and go under a couple of different names tonight, but didn't seem to hang out for very long. Anyways, and so say goodbye, everybody, to the audience.
Real quick, I just dropped a link to that segment with Norm Macdonald on Dennis Miller because it's fucking hysterical.
Okay, that's cool. That's the bottom one there in the chat.
Yep.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.